It was supposed to be just another grind run into yet another dungeon. Nothing special on the radar. Eric, chasing quick cash, signs up as a frontline warrior, another cog in the raid machine. Mages run the game now, and he missed his window, ending up a low-tier swordsman. Fate cuts him a break when a mythic relic drops into his hands, the Eye of Odin. The plan is simple. Sell the relic and never stress about money again. But first, he has to survive this dungeon. And that part suddenly feels shaky. This whole mess actually started a day earlier, when Eric met a broker from the Raider agency. Raiders are hunters of shadow creatures, treasure seekers, and shields for civilians. The job is always deadly. Yet, Eric admired them since he was a kid. Once he became one himself, he felt how slippery that path really was. For the first time in ages, he got a call with a job offer. Only now did he realize he was basically hired as cannon fodder. Jay, the agency recruiter, asks him to understand that mages are the meta now, not melee fighters. Everyone knows swordsmen clear slower and eat way more damage. Eric has no real comeback. While mages blast safely from the backline, warriors just get wrecked. 10 years ago, it was different, and all he can do now is regret his choice in silence. Back in high school, he passed the Awakened test and entered a Raider Academy like everyone else. His exams showed 97% magic potential. In the end, he still chose martial combat. Back then, mages were seen as dead weight, unable to solo even one monster. Now, everything flipped, and Eric wonders how life would look if he chose magic. Jay reminds him that gigs like this are rare and already have multiple applicants. Eric clenches his fist. As a low-level warrior, he has no real option to say no. After a few minutes of thought, he tells the broker he will take the job. Jay's face lights up, praising Eric for making the right call. They part ways, and Jay promises to meet him on site tomorrow morning. Eric says there is no need, but Jay answers vaguely that he has business there anyway. The next day, at 8 sharp, the squad gathers near the portal into the dungeon. Eric checks his phone, annoyed, since an hour has passed and Jay is still missing. His thoughts are suddenly cut off by an energetic voice. It turns out to be Alex, an old acquaintance of Eric. Alex is short on work, too, so he jumped at the chance to earn. He has zero issue with the situation and thinks a sword beats magic any day. Eric stays quiet, though his mood drops. He would trade skills in a heartbeat for steady pay. Alex winks and suggests grabbing a drink after the raid. Moments later, a man at the entrance announces the mission is about to start and calls everyone in. That only worsens the mood of the melee fighters, but none of them truly have a choice. Soon, they are inside the dungeon, the warrior line pushing forward and shielding the mages. It does not take long before a zombie horde marches toward them. Holding the dead back with a shield while mages cast, Eric wonders how low he has fallen. The mages move fast, and soon fireballs and ruinous curses rain on the undead. Eric watches the burning remains, waiting for the signal to move on. He immediately recognizes the Meteor Mage Guild, a rising star on the battlefield. Eric exhales, knowing he can at least count on surviving this run. At the corridor's end, the squad calls for a break before the boss room. Alex stows his flask and regrets wasting time instead of studying, which led him here. He suggests checking inventories, since zombies sometimes drop solid loot. Eric says he doubts anything dropped for him, but decides to check anyway. Suddenly, the inventory window glitches out, and interaction fails completely. A sharp, piercing headache slams into Eric's mind out of nowhere. When he looks up again, a system window floats before him, flashing a critical Aesir malfunction alert. This never happened to him before. Eric stares at the failed reboot notice, frustration burning deep. Suddenly, a whisper brushes his ear, urging him to follow the light. Alex watches him with concern, wondering if anything decent dropped. Eric signals nothing special, yet notices a path of glowing sparks only he can see. The lights drift deeper into the ancient ruins, pulling him forward. Eric signals he will be back soon and decides to trail the lights alone. Beneath the rubble, a narrow gap slowly opens into a hidden tunnel. He keeps checking the system window, but the same error message keeps looping. The system is called Aesir, named after the Norse gods like Odin and Thor. 20 years ago, a colossal tree rose from the ocean, blotting out the sky for 9 days. Some called it a sign of doom. Others saw it as divine blessing. In truth, that tree was Yggdrasil itself. After the 9th day, hell broke loose as portals spawned monsters worldwide. Half of humanity vanished, and half of the survivors died to hunger and disease. When the future looked sealed, a thin beam of hope appeared. The first awakened emerged, wielding the will and power of gods. Eric wonders if, after all this time, the creators decided to change the rules. The tunnel suddenly ends, and massive doors block his path. A grin spreads across his face. Something valuable is clearly hidden beyond. Countless people enter dungeons chasing the dream of treasure. Some artifacts can mess with a raider's mind. The real danger is losing awareness. Once a seeker's reason fades, tragedy waits instead of riches. Such hidden vaults rarely appear, usually only in high-rank dungeons. Thinking about the reward, Eric pushes the doors open. Torches ignite atop towering pillars, illuminating a tall pedestal at the room's center. Wasting no time, Eric reaches for the item floating above it. The system confirms a new item acquired and offers its description. It is Odin's Eye, traded for wisdom, granting rune comprehension and magic use. Everything Eric saw at auctions capped at very rare, yet he now holds a mythic relic. He imagines selling it for insane money and never touching trash jobs again. Since the item binds to the first user, he stores it without testing it. Meanwhile, Alex reassures the squad leader that Eric stepped away briefly. Right on cue, Eric returns to the passage. The break time is over, and the squad moves on. Eric apologizes for drifting off and promises it will not happen again. Unexpectedly, he also promises to cover the drinks later. Eric steps away without telling Alex a single word about the relic. Dungeons are lawless zones where what happens stays buried. If Eric revealed the treasure, it would be a death sentence. So he stays silent. The squad leader begins a briefing before the boss room. The speech is cut short as the ceiling collapses. Eric barely jumps clear, avoiding being crushed. After hitting the ground, he sees strange smoke crawling along the floor and rising. Nearby, people already caught in it cough violently. Knowing he must escape fast, Eric covers his mouth and forces himself up. Alex rushes over, seeing the poison too, and signals for a full retreat. As Eric prepares to warn the others, a blood-soaked blade bursts from Alex's chest. Eric can only watch in shock as Alex collapses to the ground. He instantly breaks into a full sprint, bolting back toward the exit. By now, the hero realizes it was a planned ambush by humans, not monsters. This is dungeon killer work, so Eric's only move is to run for his life. Suddenly, calm and steady footsteps echo behind him. Fire lights the tunnel, wrapping around a grappling hook as Eric barely dodges it. Grabbing his scratched shoulder, he turns to face the approaching silhouette. It is Jay. The man smiles wide, recalling how he promised they would meet today. Eric instantly knows Jay caused the collapse and the poison gas. Jay shrugs it off, saying it was a client request, and the guild has many enemies. Eric clenches his teeth, weighing if you could take him down alone. He remembers Jay is a first-class mage, ranked in the top 2% nationwide. That means Eric, a low-rank swordsman, never had a real chance. He chooses silence, knowing the killers were hired only for guild members. With Aesir malfunctioning, he cannot even avenge the dead. Eric offers to forget everything here in exchange for his life. Jay scoffs irritably and activates his magic. Eric barely dodges the direct hit, earning only a cut on his cheek. Jay laughs at the naivety, explaining the hunt targeted more than Meteor Guild. Eric knows talks are done. All he can do now is dodge and survive. As he runs, he wonders why a low-rank raider became a target. Suddenly, memories of a familiar face and words filled with hate surface. Eric decides to ask directly if his father was the one who ordered it. The guess clearly stuns Jay. A moment later, he bursts out laughing, praising Eric's sharp instincts. Eric realizes this kind of job was not a first-time thing. He presses further, asking if the same man ordered a hit 5 years ago. Jay admits he did not expect Eric to connect the dots, confirming. He adds that a man hiring hits on his own wife and child confused him. Eric freezes in shock, barely noticing attacks flying past him. Jay summons several hooks from portals and prepares to end it. Suddenly, Eric whispers something under his breath. For a moment, Odin's eye flashes within the system window. Jay smirks and urges him to repeat it louder as a massive surge erupts. Stunned, he stares at Eric, now the source of that power. Jay realizes the hero is growing stronger by the second and decides to finish fast. The smile vanishes as he summons another hook to strike. The hook rushes toward Eric, who does not even try to flee. When it gets too close, raging magic around Eric erases it to dust. Confusion twists Jay's face. At that same moment, Eric snaps out of shock. 2 system notices float before him, stating Odin's Eye is equipped and bound. Eric exhales in disappointment, realizing he can no longer sell it. Jay's scream cuts the silence as he feels his magic vanish. Eric vows to end him as painlessly as possible. In the next instant, Jay's own grappling hooks turn toward him. Jay staggers back in disbelief. That spell took him 7 years to master, yet Eric is just low rank. Moments later, the hooks surge at Jay, who barely escapes. Even now, he refuses to surrender and strikes back at Eric. The system announces activation of a universal source, derivation. Suddenly, the grappling hook twists midair and rockets straight toward Jay. He reacts just in time, throwing up a defensive barrier. Using Odin's Eye, Eric activates the universal source again. This time, he does not copy the technique, but forces Jay's barrier to melt away. A massive explosion follows, shaking the tunnel walls. Eric steps up to the wounded Jay, who spits blood and begs for mercy. Eric chooses to ignore that plea. Drained both physically and mentally, the hero collapses to the ground. No energy or magic remains, and he starts accepting that this is where he dies. On the edge of death, his only regret is losing the chance to use Odin's Eye again. Suddenly, a window announces a new operating system and offers to launch it. Unsure if it helps, but left with no choice, Eric activates the new system. The next notice confirms activation of a system called Nornir. Eric feels his consciousness slowly slipping away. When he opens his eyes again, he sees 3 blindfolded girls before him. They speak in an unknown tongue, and he cannot answer them. He can only reach his hand forward when one of them asks for it. In the next instant, Eric wakes in a bright room, gasping for air. The system reports time has rewound to the moment the user desired most. Remembering all the horrors, Eric cannot tell if it was real or a dream. Suddenly, he hears a door opening. Not trusting his luck, he rushes toward the entrance. Holding his mother tight, he decides that even if this is a dream, he never wants to wake. The next day, a system notice wakes him, stating his health recovered by 20%. In disbelief, he looks around, confirming he is still in his old home. The system also gives a quest to restore health to 80%. Living through Monster Wars and the Aesir system taught Eric to adapt fast. By chance, Nornir sent him 11 years back, to his high school days. Eric grabs a calendar and sees the upcoming Malaise Academy application dates. He crosses out the note about becoming a frontline warrior. With a second chance in hand, he will become a mage. At breakfast, he sniffles, missing this calm atmosphere deeply. His behavior clearly worries his mother. She decides to ask directly what troubles him. Eric smiles, saying it was just a nightmare, but adds he has news. Eliza braces herself for any choice, even if he quit the academy. Instead, he says he will apply for a different specialization. This shocks her, since Eric always aimed to be a warrior. As a caring mother, she says he should choose freely if it is well thought out. Her only request is to chase passion, not money. A few days pass, and the system confirms the health quest is complete. As a reward, Eric receives an empty card for acquiring new skills. Along with the new system, he also holds knowledge of the future and hidden treasures. The only obstacle is his lack of magic skills after training as a warrior. He can fix that with the empty card, but must choose carefully. Eric knows the system will not hand out cards freely, so each one matters. Right now, most people look down on mages. That attitude flips completely when it comes to healers. Healers are valued not only in dungeons, but also in medicine. This path would spare Eric from contempt, but long-term, it makes little sense. Eric knows he will face Jay in battle again, and healing skills will not save him there. Suddenly, a message hits his phone, and he lifts it to check the sending. Memories of a childhood friend instantly surface in his mind. They once planned to enter the academy together. Then, the unthinkable happened, and she died right in his arms. Now Eric has a chance to fix things, reading her texts and seeing she is still the same. Paula invites him to a lecture by Saint Dahlia, the strongest sorceress in the country. Eric replies that he will be there soon. Eliza asks her son not to stay out late as he rushes for the door. The moment he meets Paula, she grabs his hand and drags him down the street. Eric teases that she pulled him along because she is scared of getting lost. She blushes, denies it, yet does not let go. She also reminds him that only thanks to her, he can hear Dahlia speak. Eric admits she is right, planning to copy the saint's ability. They take their seats and wait for Dahlia's appearance. The woman is famous not only at home, but worldwide as one of the strongest. She once protected civilians back when raiders were just becoming a thing. A tap on the microphone snaps Eric out of his thoughts. Dahlia steps onto the stage and begins her speech. While the crowd cheers, Eric stays silent. He knows that in 2 months, she will fall into critical condition during a raid. The cause will not be an enemy strike, but her own magic draining her dry. Dahlia calls on all awakened to join the raider ranks. Eric understands the point, knowing few want that path, even himself once planning to quit. The lecture soon ends, leaving Paula deeply moved. Eric tells her he has errands in the city and already called her mom. Before leaving, he asks her to teach him magic, saying he changed paths, leaving Paula stunned. Eric then looks for Dahlia's car, parked nearby. His search soon pays off. He approaches Dahlia's bodyguard, saying he needs to see her. The man exhales in annoyance, stating even top fans cannot meet Dahlia so easily. Eric presses on with a smile, claiming he knows about her incurable illness. The guard looks shocked as Eric adds that he can heal her. Enraged, the man grabs Eric by the collar, demanding answers. Suddenly, the car window lowers, and Dahlia asks him not to chase the boy away yet. She asks if Eric can stand by his words, and he answers that otherwise, he would not be here. Dahlia knows lies would be easy to expose, so she trusts him. Smiling, she suggests going somewhere quiet to talk. Soon, they sit in a sealed office, and Eric takes a chair. Dahlia gets straight to the point, asking how he knows about her condition. Eric says he cannot explain, since revealing the truth would stop him from curing her. She chuckles at his confidence, yet agrees to play by his rules. Eric explains that to heal her, he must copy her skill, sacrifice. The bodyguard snaps again, calling it nonsense, since that skill cannot be copied. Dahlia wields a special tier ability, passed by bloodline or chosen successive. Unlike normal skills with formulas, special ones have none. Such powers are usually monopolized, but Eric has a shot at breaking that rule. He asks everyone to stay calm, saying he would not claim what he cannot do. Dahlia sums it up, noting he plans to heal her using her own sacrifice. She decides to give him a chance and activates the skill for him to copy. The hero pulls the empty card from his inventory and activates it, copying Dahlia's ability. Eric thanks her for the demonstration and suggests testing how well the copy worked. A bright sphere of light blooms in his palm, the sacrifice skill made manifest. Both Dahlia and her guard stare in disbelief, choosing silence over words. After the proof, Eric proposes moving on to negotiations. Dahlia asks what he wants from the guild in return. Eric requests the guild's sponsorship. Everyone knows growth demands cash and connections, and that is his price. Dahlia agrees with his logic and decides he is worth the investment. Then she adds that she has a condition of her own. She reminds him her illness is personal, yet he asks help from the guild. Eric admits the trade is uneven and asks for her counteroffer. Dahlia smiles and offers him a place in her guild. She admits she has several reasons for inviting him. First is his knowledge of her illness, which cannot be allowed to spread. Second is his perfect copy of her ability, making him extremely valuable. Third is his calm while speaking to the head of the strongest guild. Eric reflects that real growth will eventually require joining a guild. Before the time reset, even the weakest guilds rejected him. Dahlia tells him to think it over, promising a contract delivered to his home. Eric stands up, stating that healing her comes first. He steps behind Dahlia and begins the treatment. She immediately feels strength surge back as the symptoms leave her body. The bodyguard bows deeply, asking forgiveness for his earlier behavior. Eric admits he would not have believed a kid either. Soon the healing ends, and Eric asks how she feels. Dahlia walks toward the window. Tears of gratitude fill her eyes as she feels lighter than she has in years. Still, she worries the cure costs Eric his own life force and asks about it. Eric reassures her that she does not need to worry. He knows skills copied by cards carry no side effects. Dahlia hands Eric her business card, asking him to contact her if needed. Eric accepts it, noting he already has something in mind to ask for. The next day, he is driven to a mountainous area outside the city. Eric requested access to one of the guild's dungeons, and it was granted. The academy he plans to enter is a brutal place. To survive there, Eric needs a proper training ground. He is given potions and basic weapons required to clear the dungeon. Mark also hands him a weapon the guild lends for temporary use. The man then pulls out a return stone from his inventory. With it, Eric can return to the dungeon entrance at any moment. Mark smiles, calling it a small personal gift. With preparations done, Eric opens the gate and steps toward the portal. The man reminds him once more to use the stone if things go south. Eric moves forward confidently, but the system suddenly glitches again. Dark streams of magic coil around him, dragging him downward. The system reports Nornir altered his location, sending him to the lands of the dead. A moment later, Eric is spat out of the energy vortex. The hard landing knocks the air from his lungs. Struggling to his feet, he looks around at tombstones and creeping grave mist. The brutal landing and raw nerves make Eric vomit straight onto the ground. Before he can steady himself, he spots a cloaked figure in the distance. Suddenly, an arrow slices his cheek, drawing blood. The cloaked skeleton calmly pulls another arrow, lining up the next shot. Eric feels the paralytic poison creeping in and knows things just went bad. Luckily, he can cast Sacrifice on himself with no backlash. Dahlia had it different, since healing herself would only restore the energy the spell consumed. More undead begin clawing their way out of the soil. The archer looses another arrow. This time, Eric is ready. He smirks and snaps it in his hand, stunned by the absurdity. 4 spirits hover above him, backed by an archer and a draugr. Eric chuckles, impressed by how well built this squad is. Fighting them barehanded would be rough, but he brought a staff. He channels magic, charging the weapon for battle. The system informs him he is in Helheim, a brutal dungeon for rookies. On the flip side, this is the perfect place to test his new skill. The trick is that casting sacrifice on the dead turns it into an attack. Another arrow flies, but Eric deflects it with the staff in time. At the same moment, a draugr swordsman charges him. Eric strikes with the staff, smashing under the corpse's ribs. The impact hurls the enemy backward. Ghosts rush in next, scythes raised high. Right now, Eric has 0 real mage combat training. He still activates the grappling hook, striking at the ghosts around him. Clearing them out, he leaps straight for the archer. He swings the staff, then hears wood crack. His face pales as he looks at the only weapon he was given. The remaining enemies close in, surrounding him. This time, he truly has no option but sacrifice. Since the foes are undead, the healing spell flips into pure offense. Silence falls over the battlefield. After leveling up, the system restores his core stats. Eric realizes copying a skill does not grant mastery over it. Another question lingers. Why Nornir threw him into this dungeon? A chill crawls up his neck, raising goosebumps. He instantly senses a horrific presence closing in. Fear locks his muscles, making even breathing hard. To break free, Eric stabs the sharp end of the staff into his leg. As he tries to cry out, an inner warning stops him. His eyes drop to the ground, where a massive shadow swells. He looks up and meets the gaze of the dungeon boss, the Nightshade. The system urges immediate retreat, warning the danger level is extreme. Knowing he cannot win, Eric pulls the return stone from his inventory. In the next instant, the monster's strike knocks it from his hand. Eric crashes several meters away as the system flags critical health. The Nightshade keeps advancing without mercy. Eric lowers his head, realizing he cannot even dodge now. Suddenly, the monster freezes, its claw locked in place. A mysterious figure approaches from the side, a female voice admitting she invited him here. Hel reaches out to Eric, greeting him as an adversary of the gods. She touches his face, stunned that Loki chose an ordinary kid for such a role. Hel admits his magic feels decent, yet far from enough to beat the gods. Eric barely clings to consciousness, knowing quitting now is not an option. Hel confesses she likes the stubborn fire burning in his eyes. Letting go, she says with regret that he is too weak, with Ragnarok closing in. She grips his neck, demanding he grow stronger, fast, or she will kill him herself. Hel calls him an important pawn and decides he deserves a chance. She orders him to become strong enough to defeat the Nightshade. Suddenly, the system announces Eric has received the first main quest. Hel gives him 2 months, warning failure will end with his death. Dark energy streams coil around Eric once again. As a farewell, Hel wishes him luck and vows to pray for his success. When Eric opens his eyes, familiar trees and bright sunlight surround him. He instantly realizes he is back at the dungeon entrance. His wounds vanish completely, as if they never existed. The system confirms everything that happened was real. Eric exhales, overwhelmed by how tangled it all feels. One thing is certain, he must become stronger. Beating the Nightshade will be brutal, but having a clear goal feels right. First, he needs to learn mage combat basics and contacts the guild head. Unexpectedly, Dahlia messages him herself, asking to meet about the contract. Eric agrees to meet tomorrow, adding that he has something to propose. The next day, he enters the guild hall, scanning everyone around. He is escorted to a training room to meet Dahlia. Eric assumes they reviewed his profile, including his magic success rate. Entering the room, the guild leader greets him and thanks him for coming. Dahlia jumps straight to business, offering the contract, which Eric finds generous. Such deals are usually reserved for first-class raiders, favoring them heavily. Still, Eric has one condition he wants to add. Dahlia encourages him to speak freely. Eric explains it has not even been a month since he chose magic over swords. He asks Dahlia to personally teach him magic. To his surprise, she agrees, curious about his potential. First, however, she wants to test his talent. Eric expected this, knowing she would not waste time on mediocrity. Dahlia snaps her fingers, and a mana cube appears behind her. His entrance exam is to overcome this cube. Eric is stunned, since only 7% of mages can clear it. Still, refusal is not an option, contract or not. Aliat opens in the cube, and Eric feels how real its power is. Dahlia cheers him on, expecting strong results. Eric exhales and confidently steps into the cube. Inside, he enters a low-gravity space, moving like underwater. Thankfully, breathing here poses no problem. Eric starts swimming forward, knowing waiting for miracles is pointless. He understands his task is to find the exit. The only door out hides inside one of the swirling vortices. Eric chooses to trust his senses instead of wandering blindly. Suddenly, a strange sensation from the side snaps him out of focus. Inside one vortex, he spots a strange crystal radiating overwhelming mana. Outside, the bodyguard asks Dahlia if she is sure the boy can handle it. She answers calmly, recalling it took her 40 minutes. A record back. Suddenly, a massive pulse erupts from the cube, cracks racing across its surface. The guard checks his phone in shock, seeing only 10 minutes have passed. He and Dahlia stare at the cube, tense, wondering what is happening inside. Eric remembers the crystal is the cube's core, holding all its mana. He decides that breaking it will free him without searching for an exit. Clenching the crystal in his hand, he pours in all his strength. Moments later, the crystal shatters into fragments. The cube collapses, bursting into a cloud of dust. Dahlia and her guard stand frozen, words failing them. As the dust settles, Eric steps out of the room. Normally, clearing the cube takes 2 hours, with rare cases under 1. The world record belongs to Camilla from Europe at 36 minutes. Eric shakes dust from his clothes. Unaware, he just shattered that record. The guard rushes up, excitedly revealing Eric did it in 10 minutes. Dahlia joins them, eager to know how he pulled it off. Eric casually explains that he found the crystal and crushed it. Now it is Dahlia's turn to be stunned, as normal awakened cannot even sense the core. Eric's success means his mana output vastly exceeded the cube's. Smiling, Dahlia vows in her name and the guild's to forge him into a legendary mage. With that, Eric's visit ends, and he is driven home. His mom and Paula meet him there, shocked by the car that drops him off. Eliza turns pale, hoping her son did nothing illegal. In Eric's room, Paula demands to know what just happened. He hides nothing, explaining the contract with the Mage Guild. When Paula reminds him of choosing the sword, he notes that choices can change. He brings up his request for her to teach him magic. She pretends to think, then says he will owe her one wish. The next day, Dahlia announces she wants to test Eric's combat sense and reflexes. Eric smiles nervously, feeling a sparring match this early is rushed. Dahlia smiles back, reminding him he broke the Manacube record. She takes a combat stance and signals him to strike first. Eric mirrors a familiar close combat stance used by melee fighters. This posture favors speed and evasive movement. In a flash, he closes the gap and throws a punch. He never expected Dahlia to stop it barehanded. Eric jumps back, widening the distance again. He hoped to land one hit, but this is a special rank raider. Dahlia scolds him for clinging to swordsman habits. She explains the key difference lies in attack range. Mages strike from afar, weakening foes before the finish. Eric acts like a brawler, rushing straight into danger. Dahlia notes that low defense mages avoid such moves. Deciding she was too gentle, she prepares to show true mage offense. She assures him she will heal him if he gets hurt. A shiver runs through Eric at the promise of real combat. Dahlia senses he still has tricks left and urges him to go all out. Eric barely dodges as her attack tears past him. Dahlia casually announces that it is now Eric's turn to attack. Eric decides to activate the chain lightning he copied from Jay. Several hooked bolts surge toward Dahlia at once. A violent explosion follows, throwing clouds of dust into the air. Dahlia dodges cleanly and praises Eric for using a first-class ability. It becomes her turn, and she fires another energy arrow at him. As the dust settles, she sees Eric still standing. That surprises her. Even though she held back her full power, Dahlia ups the pressure, summoning multiple arrows to test his limits. In response, Eric calls forth Odin's Eye. Using the universal source, he wipes out her spell mid-flight. Dahlia is impressed, as each move shocks her more than the last. Suddenly, chain lightning appears near her, locking on. Instinctively, she raises a barrier and deflects the hook. With every minute, it gets harder to believe this is an untrained kid. Eric does not slow down and attacks again. Dahlia raises her shield once more, now puzzled that he casts without chance. Eric struggles to steady his shaking hands, low on mana against her power. Without warning, he finds himself flipped upside down. Dahlia admits he surprised her, but calls him a child nonetheless. Eric can only blink in shock, unable to rise. The guild head approaches, noting he should not expect to defeat her. Dahlia offers her hand, helping him to his feet. Eric finally feels the true gap between himself and a special rank raider. Dahlia admits an interesting idea came to her during the fight, specifically a combat style that might suit Eric alone. From now on, she asks him to call her teacher and names him her first apprentice. Back home, Eric replays the meeting in his head until Paula snaps him out of it. She tells him to focus while she explains the basics. She sketches 3 main magic paths to study: combat, enhancement, and healing. Eric is impressed by her pencil skill. She also worries about how fast he switched paths and progressed. Spells that take others months or years took him days. Eric shrugs, blaming his high magic success rate. He does not mention that his life is on the line. Paula agrees, but advises him not to abandon his swordsman training skills. Eric decides to focus on that, aiming to be more efficient. Suddenly, an old interview with a scientist resurfaces in his mind. The bespectacled man smiled, speaking of a discovery meant to help all raiders. Eric realizes that invention could push him to the next level. The mana-boosting pill was designed to raise mana instantly. All mages respected and guarded the knowledge of how to make it. Sadly, Eric only remembers the basics. He runs a hand through his hair in frustration after ruining 3 batches. He recalls the brew should turn white after the first stage. With no one to ask, he crouches down and sighs in exhaustion. This year, no one knows about the magic pill since it appears in 5 years. That makes Eric the only one with ingredients and a rough recipe. In the future, an alchemist will share the formula with the world. That thought sparks an idea with better odds of success. Instead of wrecking more ingredients, Eric decides to track down the recipe's author, Wilbert Hawkins. While getting dressed, he figures the guy should be a first year at Miles Academy. That is exactly where Eric heads next. When Yggdrasil appeared and monsters flooded the streets, a few people became the first raiders. One of them was the Lightning Blade, Richard Hawkins. The boy Eric wants to meet is that man's son. To reach the academy, Eric uses a portal. Soon he stands amid city ruins, the site of the first monster outbreak, right before the academy. With a temporary pass, Eric walks the halls, drawing surprised looks from students. From what he knows, Wilbert hates fighting, so the training yard makes no sense. Everyone knows he entered the martial division thanks to his father, despite lacking talent. Eric figures Wilbert is more likely hiding in a classroom. Suddenly, a sharp buzz of noise reaches him. Around the corner, he spots a cluster of students drawn to something. He checks it out, hearing one student mock a stutterer while another hesitates. Eric suspects who they mean and pushes through the crowd. When he opens the restroom door, a guy crashes straight into him. Eric hops back as the kid apologizes quickly. Another student sneers, asking why Eric even showed up. Wilbert lifts a frightened gaze toward Eric, unsure what comes next. Eric asks if he is okay, confusing Wilbert since they never met. Suddenly, the blonde harasser grabs Eric's shoulder, telling him to leave. The cheap intimidation only makes Eric raise a brow and scoff. Without letting the blonde finish, Eric knocks his hand away. Eric turns to Wilbert and calmly suggests heading to the nurse's office. The kid is stunned, not understanding what Eric means. The offended blonde grabs Eric by the collar, demanding an apology. He is furious, even more so at Eric's blank stare. Eric simply wonders why everyone keeps grabbing his chest to threaten him. He recalls Paula's lessons on spell construction basics. Eric follows her advice and activates an energy arrow on the bully's arm. The guy instantly folds in pain, screaming at full volume. Wilbert notices Eric cast without a spoken incantation. The blonde swears it is not over and draws his sword. In the next second, he lunges at Eric. The blade rebounds without landing a hit. Eric raised a barrier in time, one he learned from Dahlia. Eric grabs the blonde's face, signaling this ends now. He fires an energy arrow, knocking out a tooth and dropping him. The blonde crashes onto the restroom floor. Wilbert tries to recall who this stranger is and why he helped him. Eric decides he cannot leave someone unconscious behind. He pulls out a healing potion, admitting he hates using it like this. Still, he pours it over the blonde's face. All wounds vanish instantly, leaving him unharmed on the floor. With the bully handled, Eric urges Wilbert to finally head to the nurse. Soon, they reach an empty stairwell where Eric senses no one else. Wilbert mentions the nurse is not in this wing, then stops himself. He assumes Eric was sent by his father and asks if that is true. Eric pretends not to understand, choosing not to worry Wilbert. Unfortunately, his lie fails to impress Wilbert at all. Wilbert then asks straight up why Eric dragged him. Eric explains he wants a favor from him. The moment the potion comes up, Wilbert gets nervous and claims ignorance. Eric pulls out an empty vial and asks if Wilbert is its creator. Wilbert falls silent, lost in thought, never expecting someone to trace a seller that way. He knows the system Aesir guarantees black market deals and user safety. Without Odin's eye, Eric would never have such leverage. Wilbert realizes silence will not save him and tries bluffing ignorant. Eric says he understands the fear and did not come without reason. Suddenly, Wilbert bows and quietly asks him to keep this secret. Eric calmly replies he came to talk, not to threaten. He hands back the vial, saying the creator's skill caught his interest. Wilbert finally asks who Eric really is. Eric smiles, saying he is a future academy student, and gives his name. Wilbert suggests going to his room to talk freely. Sitting across from each other, an awkward silence settles in. Wilbert speaks first, asking more details about the potion Eric wants. Hearing about a pill that permanently boosts mana, Wilbert jumps up. Dropping doubts, he starts listing possible ingredients. His stutter fades, and he looks like an older, sharper version of himself. Eric knows he chose the right person. Suddenly, Wilbert slumps, suggesting Eric find a better alchemist. Eric insists Wilbert is the best, and promises full ingredient support. With the list, others might succeed, but none have Wilbert's raw talent. Overwhelmed by praise, Wilbert finally agrees. He warns there are no guarantees. Eric accepts any outcome, knowing investments can fail. Tears well in Wilbert's eyes, touched by genuine trust. He gets to work, leaving Eric only 11 days for Hell's Quest. Eric spends every day training hard with Dahlia. He can now break her defensive barriers with his attacks. They pause briefly, gauging each other's condition. The bodyguard steps in, asking them to stop for the day. He eyes the reinforced floor, already close to powder. He knows the room might collapse if they keep going. Dahlia asks if Eric truly plans to clear the dungeon again. Eric confirms, wanting to test his growth. Dahlia believes a rank 5 dungeon will be too easy for him now. Eric visits Wilbert, who greets him with dark circles and exhaustion. Wilbert presents the finished pill. Eric cannot wait and takes it immediately. His magic stats jump by 15 points instantly. Eric smiles wide, knowing he trusted the right person. Wilbert smiles shyly, saying that trust mattered. They part ways, and Eric heads for the dungeon, fully prepared. A few hours later, he stands before the dungeon gates. To boost his magic, Eric equips a full Valkyrie jewelry set. Paul stays outside on watch, making sure no one interferes. As expected, the moment he enters the dungeon, Helheim drags him in again, just like last time. He is thrown onto the same graveyard as before. Eric only hopes that if he defeats the Nightshade, he will meet Hell again. Once more, an arrow flies out of the forest. This time, Eric is ready, protected by a barrier. Undead rise from the soil as ghosts swarm in for the kill. During training, Dahlia told him about the concept of a spell sword, a role no one mastered yet. She believed Eric had a real shot, given his balance of magic and combat skills. The system cannot refresh fast enough, as Eric wipes out enemies one by one. Activating energy arrows, he charges forward with them. His magic strikes shred the ghosts in midair. At the same time, his physical skills let him dominate the Draugr on the ground. Still, the enemies keep coming without pause. Outside, unaware of the chaos within, Paul calmly checks his phone. Suddenly, a sense of unwanted presence distracts him. He instantly materializes his sword, ready to drive intruders away. His instincts prove right as a car appears on the horizon. A woman steps out, clearly familiar with Paul, complaining how hard he was to find. Paul asks Kristen why she showed up here. She explains she is on a guild mission and took the chance to check on him. Paul senses a trap. They have not spoken since graduation, but he plays along. Kristen approaches the dungeon and asks what he is guarding. Paul shuts it down. She then asks about the condition of the guild head, Dahlia. Hard lines form on Paul's face as he dismisses rumors. Kristen looks away, saying her guild has enough ears and money to know it is not gossip. Paul understands she is hinting at spies within the guild. He sighs, thanks her for the warning, and notes she just added to his troubles. Kristen says she should leave, then asks if Paul recognizes the guy in a photo. She knows he is often seen with Dahlia, and wonders what connects them. Paul replies that outsiders are not meant to know. Kristen snorts and heads back to her car, expecting no answers anyway. As the car drives off, Paul decides this must be reported to the guild head immediately. Meanwhile, Helheim turns into a slaughterhouse as Eric sits atop a pile of corpses, waiting. The wait is short. The monster emerges at the graveyard's edge, crawling toward him. Eric instantly summons energy arrows, determined to change the outcome this time. The monster charges, but Eric dodges cleanly. Energy arrows slam straight into the Nightshade. The monster recovers quickly and counters. Eric activates Odin's Eye. With it, he predicts the Nightshade's next moves and evades them. Finding the perfect opening, Eric triggers Chain Lightning. Multiple chains snap into place from all sides, trapping the monster. He used the chains not for damage, but to lock it down. The chains tighten, binding the Nightshade's limbs and body. Even that is not enough. Eric follows up with another volley of energy arrows. A precise strike slams straight into the creature's eyes. After that hit, only a few of its eyes still function. The Nightshade tears apart the chains as the system announces Berserk mode. At the same time, an unknown message appears near Eric, impossible to decipher. Looking closer, he reads the words death stigma burned into the air. The system warns he has 10 minutes to kill the monster or die. Eric tries to erase the curse with the universal source, but it instantly regenerates. He tries again and again, yet nothing changes. Eric realizes this burden was placed on him by hell. With 9.5 minutes left, he stops wasting time and charges in. Suddenly, the nightshade starts running away, as if mocking him. Eric fires an energy arrow, but the monster dodges with ease. He decides on a large-scale spell, one it cannot evade. Suddenly, the nightshade lets out a piercing scream. Fear claws at Eric's neck as the system reports a fear debuff. The monster attacks while he is frozen, landing a brutal hit. The effect fades quickly, saving him from being thrown too far. Only 7 minutes remain on the countdown. Eric thinks fast. If the monster senses healing magic, it will strike again. That would only waste all his mana. Then, a new idea sparks as he notices the nightshade's damaged eyes. Eric decides to blind it completely and summons the power of wind. Violent air currents throw the monster back, forcing it to regain balance. Eric raises his hand and calls forth a blinding flash. White light floods the entire battlefield. While the monster is blinded, Eric binds it again with chain lightning. Turning, he notices the spell had no effect on the Draugr. Eric stays calm. Now he can freely cast healing magic. He unleashes the spell again and again, turning it into an attack on the undead. With seconds left, the nightshade finally collapses. The death stigma evaporates from Eric's body. The space around him begins to crumble. His vision opens onto a massive temple of hell, buried in ice and snow. Suddenly, 2 crimson eyes stare at him from the dark entrance. A giant beast with a skull for a face lunges toward him. Eric burns his last mana to summon chain lightning. The beast halts as Hell's calm voice orders it to escort the guest. Garm obeys instantly and steps aside. Eric follows the hound into the temple. Reaching the main hall, Garm flops down as Eric announces his success. Hell materializes, admitting she did not expect him to survive. Still, she congratulates him and accepts him as an enemy of the gods. Eric asks why she gave him Nornir and forced these trials. Hell smiles, saying it was all to forge the god's adversary. That does not explain why she chose him, and he presses further. Hell replies that he was born with this fate. She reveals that she, Loki, and others expect Eric to kill Odin. Hell admits he may feel deceived and trapped by fate. She asks him to remember the end was started by the world itself, not the gods. Familiar streams of magic wrap around Eric's body. He asks her to wait, still full of questions. Hell only tells him to grow stronger and awaits their next meeting. The magic fully engulfs Eric. The next day, Eric is met at a mall by Serana from the guild. It turns out the guild head wanted to give Eric a gift, since his academy entry is right around the corner. Together with Serana, they head out shopping for essentials. Eric still cannot shake what happened in the dungeon from his mind. Now he holds 3 insane tier abilities: Hell's Blessing, God's Ward, and a God's Eye. Before this, he never even heard of such a tier, and suspects Nornir unlocked it. Lost in thought, Eric barely notices them entering a weapon shop. One glance at the price tag makes him almost choke from the cost. He nervously watches Serana pay for a blade that looks completely ordinary. She explains Academy-issued weapons are trash, so owning a personal one is safer. Eric peeks at her phone, where a long shopping list is open. The sheer number of items makes his head spin. Soon, his arms ache under shopping bags, far beyond a couple of elixirs. Serana casually suggests checking out armor next. Eric asks her to stop, saying he already has armor, while storing purchases in inventory. His current armor even grants a stealth skill. Hearing that, Serana asks if he is interested in stealth-based artifacts. She admits such items are extremely rare and highly desired. Eric waves it off, claiming he was just mumbling without real intent. Still, he asks if she knows anyone who studies stealth seriously. Serana says there are few, and the only one she knows is her brother, Paul. The image of Dahlia's bodyguard flashes in Eric's mind, shocking him. Serana suggests skipping armor and checking other weapon types instead. Suddenly, everything freezes as Eric receives a resonance notification. Particles of light appear around him, the same ones he saw long ago in the dungeon. Eric rushes after them, ignoring Serana trying to stop him. Inside one shop, he finds a strange item. The system reports his God's Eye evolved, unlocking detection. Studying the stone, he sees the outline of a mysterious object within. The system identifies it as Mistletoe, the mistletoe branch that ended Baldur. At the same mall, Gilbert Wood arrives with his father. Gilbert worries about hospital bills, but his father shuts him down. The man says he will handle everything, telling his son to focus on training. Walking through the crowd, Gilbert wonders why he chose this path. When his powers first awakened, becoming a raider felt like a blessing. His talent could save his family from crushing poverty. That joy died fast under his father's pressure to weaponize it. Eric finishes buying the stone, using his own money. Serana finally finds him, running up out of breath. Eric hides the stone in his inventory, saying everything is fine now. He adds that there is no longer any need to shop for weapons. Suddenly, alarms blare through the mall about a nearby dungeon breach. Eric instantly takes off, rushing to help. Panic erupts as staff guide civilians to safety. Amid the chaos, Gilbert freezes in place. Before raiders arrive, many civilians could die. Gilbert bolts toward the dungeon site, ignoring his father. He decides this is his chance to prove he is strong enough to be a raider. Eric leaps outside, smashing through glass. On the street below, he sees an entire goblin army. In the next second, Eric activates energy arrows and goes on the offensive. With steady, calculated strikes, Eric starts wiping out monsters in packs. Turning a corner, Gilbert comes face to face with a goblin army. That is the moment fear locks him in place. He only feels his hands shaking, unable to move an inch. Sensing prey, the monsters rush straight at him. Out of nowhere, another guy lands in front of him with brutal force, knocking Gilbert back. The newcomer instantly recognizes him as the prodigy Gilbert Wood. Eric quickly signals that he will need Gilbert's help. Before Gilbert can even react to a goblin closing in, a precise attack deletes it. Eric urges him to get up and draw his weapon to save civilians. Gilbert assumes he is facing a real raider and, feeling supported, stands tall. Confidence surges as he accepts the mission to protect people. Eric knows Gilbert can use intimidation and signals him to pull the monsters in. Gilbert steps forward, weapon ready, determined to give it everything. Moments later, he unleashes a terrifying roar that draws enemies and weakens them. The skill is far above basic intimidation, confirming Gilbert's rare talent. Sadly, in the future, Gilbert only became a second-rank raider. No one understood the fall, earning him the name Unlucky Genius. Eric is sure mindset can be fixed, and such talent is worth keeping close. While Gilbert holds the line, Eric hits the monsters from behind with chain lightning. Working together, they wipe out the entire goblin force. Fast. A raider from the cleanup squad suddenly joins them. He introduces himself as Parker from the raider agency. Shocked they did this alone, Gilbert glances at Eric, then decides to tell the truth. Parker recognizes Eric's face, but realizes they are just high schoolers. Scratching his head, he admits he has no idea what to write in the report. Eric suggests writing that the agency handled everything, since no one would believe the truth. Parker says he cannot hide it fully, but will keep it low profile. When rewards come up, Eric asks that all money go to Gilbert. Eric wants zero attention, especially from his father. He plans to shock him later with the strength hidden from his sight. Gilbert hesitates, unsure if taking all the reward is right. Still, the money could save his hospitalized mother. Eric sees his hesitation is not about pride. To push him, Eric reminds him his actions truly earned that reward. Gilbert agrees, promising to repay the debt someday. As Eric turns to leave, Gilbert asks for a name or number. Eric smiles, saying they will meet again during academy enrollment as classmates. The revelation stuns Gilbert, who thought Eric was a full raider. Enrollment day arrives, and Eric comes with Paula. People excitedly whisper about the genius Gilbert nearby. Eric also notices another dark horse, Nadine Lloyd. He considers recruiting her as well. For now, he feels no rush, surrounded by powerful connections. Chairman Bert Cruz steps onto the stage. He welcomes everyone to the enrollment ceremony. Eric glares at him, finally recalling the face tied to future tragedy. A memory surfaces where Paula dies before ever entering the academy. Eric urges her to stay sharp, knowing anything can happen today. She smiles back, confident she can handle whatever comes. Eric remembers Paula ranked among the top 3 mages at entry and decides she will not die this time. Bert Cruz wraps up his speech and signals the start. Excitement twists his face as he announces a special event held at every enrollment. He explains a game where seniors and rookies steal name tags in a sealed zone. Suddenly, magic circles ignite beneath the students' feet. Paula panics, never expecting this to happen. She stumbles, and Eric lunges to catch her, knowing splitting up is dangerous. Paula comes to inside the isolated space. Eric looks around and spots Nadine nearby. Isolated zones are known for letting the creator control physics and laws completely. Eric knows this is no place to relax, especially with Nadine close. Bert Cruz's voice cuts in again. He announces that only third-rank skills or lower can be used here. He explains the scoring system for stolen name tags. He urges them to value points, since they act as academy currency. Eric realizes all his learned spells are sealed.
He also notes that Cruz said nothing about special abilities.
Bert Cruz adds that attack power is reduced many times over for safety. Eric exhales, knowing that is a blatant lie. Eric signals Paula that they need to move and find shelter for the next 3 days. Paula suggests bringing Nadine along, since she is also a mage. She believes mages are safer together than alone. Eric is surprised by how clear-headed she is under pressure. Still, Nadine worries him, feeling hard to control. He only knows her from news, where she once snapped and killed many people. Eric warns Paula to stay cautious, as betrayal can come fast. Paula, watching Nadine, sees the same look Eric had when they first met. She approaches Nadine, despite Eric trying to stop her. Paula warmly invites Nadine to join them, believing unity means safety. Nadine looks upward, sensing trouble, saying something bigger is coming. Suddenly, 2 senior students land a few meters away. The guy is thrilled, happy to jump 3 rookies at once. The blonde girl is confused, sensing only 2 targets. Eric alarms her, since she feels no energy from him at all. Paula urges Eric to run, but he knows it will not work. The blonde has a unique skill to sense any target within 300 kilometers. The senior cannot wait to crush these weaklings and move on. He draws his sword and charges. He swings at Eric, but Eric dodges smoothly. Eric admits he almost missed being attacked by swords. The senior assumes the mage rookie got lucky and attacks again. Eric evades just as easily. The next strike is stopped with Eric's bare hand. Eric notes he is impressed the senior even entered the academy with such skill. Clenching his fingers, he crushes the sword into shards. Eric offers a clean trade. Name tags for their safety. The senior cannot believe a rookie beat him. Wasting time in shock, he gets punched straight in the face. The blow sends him flying into his partner. The system announces the first player elimination. The blonde girl panics at the sudden turn and demands to know who they really are. Eric ignores her and signals Paula to accept the team invite he already sent. Paula draws her weapon, wondering when her friend got this strong. Nadine also pulls out her wand, just in case. The blonde decides to drop at least one of the trio before escaping. Inside, she curses her partner for making things way harder than needed. Paula casts a barrier in time, stopping the blade cold. The blonde abandons the ambush plan and goes for a clean escape. A binding spell snaps around her, yanking her back. With no exit, she hurls her blades at the enemy. They clang uselessly off Paula's barrier. Paula could win easily, but Eric chooses to speed things up. Nadine beats him to it, activating her unique skill, Sword of Alfheim. Several blades pierce the blonde before she can throw again. The system announces another elimination. The points split evenly between the girls. Nadine carefully checks if she interfered, but Paula thanks her calmly. At night, the forest near their shelter fills with steps and rustling. Hunters found their trail. Senior students confirm the trio headed straight for the hideout. The hunt lasts 3 days, and they know hiding the whole time is impossible. As they search for fresh traces, Paula watches them silently. Catching the timing, she strikes one hunter. His body fades as the system confirms elimination. His partner spots Paula fleeing through the trees. Moments later, a full group of seniors is on her tail. They have no idea the hunters are being led into a trap. Paula dashes past a tree with mushrooms at its roots. The system instantly warns her of a dangerous organism nearby. Luring them in, she boosts herself with wind acceleration and widens the gap. The seniors grow uneasy, reading the system warnings. One suggests stopping, saying the area ahead is lethal. Their leader snaps back, reminding them one of theirs was killed and bans retreat. He leaves one man behind as backup. The rest are ordered forward. He knows it is a trap, but cannot stand being looked down on. Soon they catch up to Paula in a clearing. Hearing them close in, she turns cautiously. The hunters taunt her to keep running. Paula steadies herself, declaring they are already dead, and calls the leader out. The seniors draw weapons and rush her, telling her to cut the arrogance. At the right moment, Paula detonates a nearby mushroom, launching spore. It is too late. Everything within 50 meters is paralyzed. Paula suddenly casts swap and begins to fade away. The next instant, Eric's foot slams into the leader's face, replacing her. Now it is his turn to fight. The blow sends the senior flying several meters back. Paralyzed, the guy mocks Eric, saying the spores will hit him too. He mentions a lookout outside the spore zone, met only by Eric's cold stare. Eric states calmly, that man will never make it here. At that moment, a crash and a scream echo through the forest. The guard they left behind is pinned to the ground by Nadine's swords. The senior grits his teeth in pure frustration. He rages that they are all paralyzed, and he will recover faster than Eric. Unexpectedly, Eric steps forward, warning him not to jump to conclusion. The guy turns pale instantly, stammering that this cannot be happening. Eric agrees it should not,
but suggests discussing it with the gods who decided otherwise. A few clean strikes are enough to knock the senior out of the hunt.
Eric throws a sharp, eager glance at the remaining enemies and moves toward them.
Meanwhile, Nadine gives Paula ash tree sap.
Paula complains about the bitter taste, but the paralysis slowly fades.
Nadine suggests moving out to regroup with Eric.
Eric waits at the marked spot, leaning against a tree. He smiles as the girls reach him, praising their precise execution of the plan. Before the ceremony, he visited Wilbert for advice on paralysis mushroom. Wilbert told him about an effective antidote, ash sap, common in this area. After the clash, the trio returns to the shelter. There, Eric starts brewing a health restoration potion. He recalls Wilbert's despair during dozens of failed attempts back in training. Nadine is impressed by Eric's knowledge, feeling he seems 10 years older than his age. Eric flinches at her insight, pretending not to get what she means. Paula suddenly suggests cooking something, so they have strength for tomorrow. She asks for space by the fire, but Eric urges her to relax and eat berries instead. He remembers tasting her cooking once, and it ended badly. Though he is no better, Nadine offers her own cooking skills instead. Eric is surprised by her enthusiasm as she explains she cooked daily with her grandmother. She ties up her hair and gets to work. Eric reflects on how little he truly knows about Nadine. Soon the meal is ready, stunning them with its flavor. Paula rushes to hug Nadine in gratitude, glad they will not live on berries anymore. Meanwhile, in the observation room, Bert Cruz receives the success rankings. Everyone is unsettled, seeing genius Gilbert Wood only in 4th place, with mages leading. Bert asks to replay the footage from the paralysis mushroom zone. He rewatches it several times, convinced this is no ordinary mage. Eric's top-ranked profile is brought in, though the assistant doubts its accuracy. Bert sees the warrior listed with 97% magic compatibility. A predatory smile spreads across his face as he barely holds back laughter. He decides to personally verify how talented the boy truly is. His assistant promises to prepare everything as Gilbert's face appears on the screen. Meanwhile, the heroes continue hunting senior students. Paula is ecstatic as her points surpass 1 million. She also wonders why they keep moving farther from the shelter. Eric explains the seniors are now afraid to come closer. Nadine agrees, noting that staying put will not secure dominance. As they prepare to move on, a strange flash lights up the forest. Someone is coming. A massive surge of energy tears through the ground from between the trees. The trio dodges just in time, knowing they cannot ignore this. Suddenly, the system tells Eric the isolation limits are lifted. Nadine instantly realizes who launched that attack. Eric focuses and admits he never expected their next meeting like this. Gilbert steps out of the forest, head lowered, offering no response to Eric. Eric instantly senses something is wrong. Gilbert approaches, breathing hard, clearly unstable. Just moments ago, he was hunting senior students without pause. He survived 2 full days, yet only reached 4th place in points. Still, he cannot deny how insane Eric's performance is. Even nerfed and playing as a mage, Eric claimed 1st place with ease. After a short rest, Gilbert decided to grind points again while time remained. Suddenly, a screen appeared before him, and Chairman Cruz addressed him. Cruz made a small request, his eyes shimmering with strange magic. Pain exploded in Gilbert's head, dropping him to his knees. The system warned of external interference affecting his mind. Yielding to it, Gilbert fired a raw shockwave forward. Nadine warns that he is clearly not himself, controlled by an outside force. Eric knows she is right and recalls this exact state from his past life. Back then, it was during the Academy Festival, meant to bring joy. Instead, tragedy struck, caused by Gilbert's skill indoctrination. When exposed and near arrest, Gilbert staged chaos and vanished. Eric remembers that day clearly because Paula died saving him. Eric decides his top priority is snapping Gilbert back to reality. Gilbert steps forward, drawing his sword, ready to strike. A system alert announces the start of a new quest. Eric must save a cadet under control to earn a blank card. Eric sizes up weak points as Paula rushes to help. He stops her, ordering her and Nadine to leave and hunt seniors instead. Paula freezes, stunned by his decision. She reminds him this is the strongest genius, impossible to beat. Unexpectedly, Nadine backs Eric's call. Outvoted, Paula has no choice but to retreat. She grabs Nadine by the hood and bolts into the forest, hoping Eric follows. Eric smirks, thinking this will not take long. Gilbert activates Martial Ascendance, a 1st-rank skill. Sword raised, he charges Eric head-on. Eric dodges, noting Gilbert is far stronger than days ago. He leaps back off Gilbert's shield to gain distance. The moment he lands, Eric triggers Wind Boost. The burst sends him streaking past Gilbert. He strikes from behind, but Gobert dodges instantly. Eric notes Gilbert's body reacted before his mind caught up. That innate combat instinct is a serious threat. Eric could use universal derivation right now, but showing that on camera would be reckless and dumb. He can almost picture Bert Cruz's smug grin already. Eric decides not to disappoint the audience and prepares a real show. He activates Chain Lightning and attacks Gilbert head-on. Chairman Cruz watches with pure delight as titans clash. Soon, Gilbert drops to one knee, completely drained. Eric admits this went far enough, but Gilbert will recover soon. Instead, Eric turns his attention to the surrounding cameras. He triggers Blinding Flash, wiping every screen in the control room. Bert Cruz desperately searches for a working feed, finding none. Forcing a friendly smile, he orders the cadet brought to him after the hunt ends. Eric walks up to Gilbert and activates universal derivation, cutting off the mind control. Gilbert lifts his head, lost and confused, while Eric checks his condition with a calm smile. Gilbert tries to say he is fine, but delayed pain from a forgotten battle crashes into him. Eric explains that Gilbert attacked out of nowhere, leaving no choice but to strike back. Gilbert cannot grasp why he would do that, and Eric tells him about mental interference. Gilbert recalls the restriction on using high-rank skills during the event. Eric admits uncertainty and suggests a temporary system malfunction. Gilbert realizes it is unlikely any student could wield such power. Carefully, he asks Eric if he suspects who might be behind it. Still smiling, Eric says he has no idea. Rising to his feet, he adds that whoever did it must hold serious authority. Feeling guilty, Gilbert asks for forgiveness for the attack. Eric tells him not to worry and prepares to leave. Suddenly, Gilbert hands over his name patch. Eric reminds him that giving it up removes him from the hunt. Gilbert insists he lost fairly, so the patch belongs to Eric. He adds that his points total is already more than enough. As he vanishes, he vows to win next time. Soon, the hunt ends and students return to the academy. Most are completely drained after the ordeal. Checking the board, Eric decides 1.5 million points is a solid start. Paula fumes that he shows zero excitement despite breaking a record. Nadine regrets they lacked just one more hour to earn another 100 points. Eric explains that 1 point equals 10 real dollars, freezing Paula in shock. She grabs Nadine's hands and starts dancing, realizing how rich they are. Eric can only hide his face, dodging jealous and judgmental stares. Suddenly, an adult instructor appears and heads straight for them. He introduces himself as Instructor Fletcher and asks them to come talk. Eric immediately asks if this is about what happened during the event. The instructor nods. Eric walks past him, already knowing the destination is the chairman's office. Inside, Eric drops onto the couch, annoyed to find the chairman absent. Paula and Nadine, unsure what changed, sit beside him. Bert Cruz soon enters, thanking them for waiting. The girls stand and introduce themselves. Unlike Eric, the chairman smiles warmly and says he is impressed. Eric cuts him off, noting that keeping people waiting is rude. Everyone turns to Eric with uneasy looks. Behind his smile, Bert begins to boil with irritation. He apologizes again, claiming he needed time to prepare. He first congratulates the top-ranking students for breaking records. Unimpressed, Eric urges him to get to the point. Bert agrees and announces rewards for such talented students. He offers free dorm housing, priority access, and retake privileges. A contract is presented as a unique partnership opportunity. Without even reading it, Eric refuses. Bert's face twists as Eric says they can earn those perks in a month. To be precise, Eric reads the contract to recall its terms. It states they must give 30% of their earnings to the academy. Eric drops the contract on the table, saying this is not a reward, but a cash grab. Bert lowers his head, admitting no one can be forced to sign, and decides not to push. He advises them to think carefully before locking in a final choice. As expected, Paula and Nadine side with Eric and refuse as well. Bert says he regrets it, claiming those were the best terms he could offer. Suddenly, he fixes Eric with a tense stare and urges him to reconsider. Eric feels the pressure of a skill, but Hell's blessing shields his mind. He flips the moment, trading a blank card to gain indoctrination himself. Bert clearly did not expect Eric to still refuse after that interference. Eric rises from the couch, stating it is time to go. Every academy student is assigned a dorm room by default. Eric drops onto his bed, exhausted, yet the air feels heavy and wrong. In the morning, mage students gather for the first lesson in a strange hall. Eric, Paula, and Nadine are among them. They are greeted by their magic energy instructor, Linda. Eric has never seen her before and feels surprised. He suspects she quit not long after his enrollment in the old timeline. Everyone knows teaching at the academy is brutal work. Those who stay are usually scoundrels like Bert, living off his favors. Linda senses their curiosity about why class is held here. This hall has the capacity to test mana sensitivity in new students. Eric feels the energy, like when he entered the mana cube, but thinner. Linda explains the device is a mana chamber, similar to the cube. Everyone understands students cannot endure full cube pressure yet. The chamber is split into zones with rising mana density. Linda leads them into the first zone. No one struggles in the first section. In the second, several students begin to feel unwell. With each zone, fewer students can follow. Only 4 reach the 8th zone, where Paula and one boy strain hard. Only Eric and Nadine step into the 9th zone. The moment Nadine enters, her condition worsens. When Eric rushes to her, she lies and claims she can continue. Despite that, she loses consciousness. Assistants carry her out of the zone. Eric decides to enter the final 10th zone. Linda rushes after him, as even she feels crushed there. Eric turns with a smile, claiming it is heavy for him too. Linda does not believe it, seeing no fatigue, but stays silent. Reuniting with his friends, Eric is relieved they are both safe. Watching Nadine, he realizes she is more than just reckless. Her drive likely hides something deeper. He is certain their bond will change her future. That evening, Dahlia calls Eric to ask about the first trial. She admits she wanted to hear it straight from him. He does not surprise her by saying he took first place. She notes he is not in his dorm, confirming his hunt success. Dahlia says she is proud, while Eric admits he aimed for second. He mentions Nadine, Paula, and Gilbert as talents worth the guild's eye. He also makes sure to bring up Wilbert. Dahlia replies that taking the boy under her wing could spark a guild conflict. She wonders if Wilbert is really worth that kind of risk. Eric's answer is absolute, saying it is totally worth it. He states with confidence that the kid will become a famous alchemist one day. After the talk, Eric says goodbye to Dahlia and wishes her a calm night. Suddenly, Paul reports that Melissa has arrived. Kristen enters the office alongside the blonde woman. Melissa approaches Dahlia and offers a greeting gesture. Dahlia gently refuses and asks to skip pleasantries and get to the point. Accepting that tone, Melissa asks how much the boy named Eric would cost. Dahlia's face darkens as she fully grasps the meaning behind the words. She quickly restores a calm smile, answering that some things are not for sale. Melissa admits she expected no agreement and was only being polite. She leaves, promising their paths will cross again soon. The next day, all students are gathered for physical capability testing. Despite his effort, Eric places second, right behind Gilbert. He reminds himself that Gilbert earned the title of martial arts genius for a reason. Instructor Fletcher announces the start of the second physical evaluation. Every future raider must participate, regardless of specialization. This test focuses on evasion skill, analyzed by the system. Fletcher adds that defeating monsters will still grant bonus points. Before the test, students receive odd devices resembling wireless earbuds. These are augmented reality units that make projections feel real. They prevent real injuries while training proper danger response. Fletcher explains the system has 100 levels, but today stops at 10. Teams of 4 are already formed, each entering one at a time. Eric joins a group with 2 warrior girls and 2 mages. He admits, internally, the balance is not bad at all. His thoughts are interrupted by a mage teammate. The guy admits he still cannot believe a mage took first place. He hints that Eric must have special privileges to pull that off. Eric replies that he has no special treatment. Catching the tone, he adds that he is ready to prove himself fairly. Their teammates do not understand the hostility within one squad. Fletcher calls their team onto the field. As they take position, the countdown to battle begins. The first enemy is a skeleton. Jake chooses to keep distance and steps back. Eric decides to do the exact opposite. Even his teammates' warning shouts fail to stop. Jake cannot grasp why a mage charges in so recklessly. Eric activates a physical boost to prove his point. He grabs the skeleton's skull with one hand and rips it free. Slamming it into the wall, he ends the fight instantly. His teammates stare as the skeleton's body fades away. 3 more skeletons spawn right after. Eric handles them the same way, fighting barehanded. The magic weapon skill is rarely used by mages since it boosts only physical damage. Considered useless, it fits Eric perfectly as a spellblade. After the first stage, the second begins with a Draugr. Soon, Eric clears the 10th level, leaving the arena looking like shattered ruins. Jake approaches the hero, demanding explanations. He cannot grasp how a mage can charge in solo and wipe out every enemy alone. Eric says it was obvious in the fight, and even suggests Jake test that punch himself. The instructor notices the clash and orders them to stand down. Eric turns to leave, but Jake shouts that he does not see him as the winner. Jake proposes settling it at the Academy Festival. Eric replies that he already has plans for that event. During the earlier contest, Gilbert vowed to grow strong enough to beat him. In the final results, the top 3 include Gilbert and Eric. Bert Cruz thanks Fletcher for the report and asks him to keep feeding info on Eric. He also orders preparations for the next trial. Eric throws himself into training, clearing the test flawlessly, 27 times straight. Right now, his strength can match 6 third-class raiders at once. Knowing the next trial is a pseudo-dungeon, he pushes himself to the limit. That dungeon will host an incident that stains the Academy's name. Several students will die there. Eric remembers it clearly, since his own team was involved. He was the only survivor, and was blamed as the worthless one who should have died. Even then, he did not abandon the Academy. He could not betray those who cared about him. After training, Eric stops by an alchemy shop and buys several potion vials. Last time, he could not prevent what happened. This time, he swears to do everything right. The next day, Eric, Nadine, and Paula share their worries about the practice. He takes the chance to hand each of them a potion. Luck saved him before, but now he takes control himself. Back home, a sense of unease refuses to fade. A system window appears, mentioning points of no return. During such moments, he can choose to repeat the past or change it. Eric knows this message is no coincidence and starts thinking hard. The following day, students are brought to the pseudo-dungeon for practice. Instructor Linda announces they will be split into teams to enter. She claims only low-level demons await inside. Eric knows this is the trap set by Bert Cruz. Among the weak monsters, boss-class enemies will also appear. Team assignments begin through random draws. By chance, Eric and Nadine land in the same team. A boy and a girl join them, assigned to that group as well. Eric holds his breath in quiet dread. Those two sacrificed their lives last time, so he could escape alive. Now, he understands the choice the system warned him about. Still, he must pretend to be glad to meet Anna and Colt. They quickly notice how shy Nadine becomes, hiding from conversation. Eric realizes sadly that Anna and Colt are exactly the same as before. He shifts his focus and suggests building a strategy together. They decide who leads and how to act in emergencies. With Eric's confidence and knowledge, the plan comes together naturally. Colt admits he expected nothing less from the hunt's top scorer. Just in time, Linda announces it is time to enter the dungeon. Gilbert and Paula end up in the same group and head for the entrance as well. Eric feels a wave of relief, knowing at least his friend will be safe this time. Each squad gets its own dungeon, and Linda signals everyone to move inside. Gilbert's team pushes forward through a tight, choking tunnel. Paula quickly figures it is a mine, meaning cobalt mobs are guaranteed. Gilbert suddenly orders a halt, sensing something dangerous rushing toward them. Moments later, they are boxed in by a swarm of cobalt creatures. He warns that numbers make them deadly and calls for a full attack. Gilbert charges first, not waiting for hesitation. Paula strikes from the rear, since her spell needs time to bloom. In a blink, a flash of light blinds the enemies. Soon after, every monster drops. Gilbert checks on the girls, finding them tired but unharmed. The boy, however, is in bad shape, gasping for air in panic. When he collapses to his knees, fear spreads, and poison is suspected. Suddenly, Paula senses something approaching fast. She realizes it is not poison, but the pressure of a cobalt boss. At the same time, Eric's group advances through their own tunnel. They already cleared several cobalt packs without trouble. They step into a cavern, glowing with crystal light. Eric does not recognize this place and knows Cruz interfered. Feeling danger close, he tells everyone to brace themselves. A violent force smashes through the cavern wall. As dust settles, small cobalts pour out around a massive boss. Anna and Colt are stunned, since they were promised weak enemies. Seeing their shock, Nadine moves first. She casts protective barriers, snapping the pair out of panic. Colt triggers provocation, pulling the small cobalts onto himself. Eric sprints straight at the biggest threat, the cobalt boss. His strike hits so hard, it kicks dust into the air. Right after, the monster's body starts regenerating at insane speed. Eric almost laughs at Cruz, throwing such a foe at freshmen. Suddenly, the system identifies the target as Odin's Raven. A quest appears, tasking Eric with hunting and defeating 5 such beings. All of this is watched closely by instructor Linda. She admits even she lacks techniques like the ones Eric uses. Another dungeon entrance suddenly opens nearby. Linda is shocked that this group finished faster than Eric's. Looking closer, she sees terrified students, one unconscious.
Gilbert explains they encountered a cobalt boss.
Linda pales, since such an enemy should not exist there. Assistants rush to aid the boy, suffering mana poisoning. Linda calls Bert Cruz to report a second-rank monster in training grounds. To her surprise, the chairman answers calmly and promises to handle it. Doubt grows in her mind that this was mere coincidence. Meanwhile, Eric's team is nearly overwhelmed. The Raven-controlled Cobalt lifts its club again, ready to strike. In Myth, Odin commands two ravens, Hugin and Munin. Through them, he watches all worlds and events. Eric knows this enemy will not go down easy. He rushes to Nadine, raises a barrier, and briefly considers retreating. Back then, he never doubted. Yet all he felt in the end was regret, eating him alive. This time, he decides it is finally time to throw hands for real. Eric signals the team to bail from the dungeon while he stalls the Cobalt. Colt tries to shut that idea down, knowing how reckless it sounds. Eric answers by dropping two small Cobalts, sneaking up behind the guy. Losing patience, he pushes them to get out fast, before it is too late. While his focus slips, the Cobalt boss locks onto him as its next target. Turning back, Eric finds a magic barrier already blocking the blood. Nadine saved him, calmly deciding she will stay and fight with him. That single choice flips Eric's resolve. He agrees to stay, but orders Anna and Colt to run and warn the instructor. Uneasy about leaving, they still promise to return as fast as possible. Eric and Nadine are left facing small Cobalts and the massive boss alone. Nadine takes rearguard, summoning magic blades into the air. One clean strike wipes out a pack of the smaller Cobalts. Eric shifts all focus onto the towering Cobalt boss. Closing in, he notices the monster's body melting from inside. That sight forces him to slow his assault. He realizes the body cannot handle the energy forced into it by the controller. Eric equips the mistletoe branch, an item that reveals magic flow. Now he clearly sees the Raven feeding power into the Cobalt. He fires chain lightning to sever that connection for good. Multiple chains rush toward the Cobalt in a storm. One savage swing of the club shatters them instantly. Eric pulls back to gain space and prep another move. He lands beside Nadine and asks her to cover him. She looks drained, yet still pushes herself to comply. Knowing they get one shot, Eric launches chain lightning again. The Cobalt does not wait and counters head on. Nadine's barrier lets Eric move freely across the cavern. Every second makes it harder for her to keep that shield up. Reaching the right distance, Eric jumps onto one of his own chains. That move lets him dodge the monster's brutal swings. Nadine watches in disbelief as he weaponizes his own spell. In a flash, Eric ends up right above the beast. Like a puppet, the Cobalt's arm twists at an unnatural angle. The club rockets straight toward Eric. Using pure agility, he slips past the strike cleanly. Spotting the magic tether, he draws his blade. One slash severs the threads controlling the monster. The massive Cobalt collapses, crashing into the ground. Eric moves to the breach, where the Cobalts poured in, hearing a sharp cry. There, he finds a raven-like creature, lying in a pool of blood. Eric pins it underfoot, demanding answers about Odin's plan. The creature only thrashes and screams, refusing to respond. Realizing it acts without free will, Eric releases it. Nadine suddenly calls out to him. Remembering the danger, Eric urges her to escape the poisoning fast. At that moment, dark energy leaks from the Cobalt's corpse toward them. Thanks to the magic within him, Eric expels the dark energy with ease. The system also congratulates him on defeating one Raven and drops a reward. Sadly, Nadine lacks the mana needed to purge the monster's energy from her body. The system warns that without immediate healing, the girl will die. Some time passes. Nadine wakes up beside a sleeping Eric. The guy groggily wakes and checks how she is holding up. Reviewing her stats, Nadine is shocked to see everything back to normal. What bugs her more is why Eric stayed. Since the Cobalt was already beaten, Eric explains he waited for her to wake so they could sort something out. Before leaving the dungeon, they need to agree on one version of events. He knows Nadine is confused, yet he cannot share the details. He also admits he does not want people knowing about his abilities. Eric reveals the Cobalt boss was no accident, and the chairman clearly interfered. He knows Bert's real face behind the public image, a man willing to sacrifice the weak. Nadine realizes this is why Eric hides his true power. She recalls the day the chairman offered them that contract. Even then, Eric acted like someone who knew Bert Cruz far too well. Eric apologizes and refuses to explain further to keep her out of danger. Meanwhile, Anna and Colt return to the intermediate chamber. The instructor struggles to hold Paula back as she demands answers. Suddenly, the dungeon passage opens and Nadine and Eric step out.
Paula rushes in with hugs, having worried non-stop about them.
Colt and Anna watch with guilty faces.
They never felt okay leaving their teammates behind.
Eric notices their tension and tells them they did exactly what he asked.
Louder for all to hear, he explains they left to call the instructor for help.
He asks everyone not to blame them, since it was his call. Paula still struggles to accept leaving people behind. With a bitter smile, Eric admits he would have done the same.
Linda approaches and apologizes for not reaching them in time.
Eric tells her not to blame herself, since she could not have known. He says goodbye to everyone and heads home, claiming exhaustion.
The system announces completion of the point of no return quest and grants a golden apple. Back home after a bath, Eric's thoughts drift to Nadine. Before returning to the past, Paula had already died, and Gilbert never reached his potential. Nadine, however, survives no matter what.
Eric decides not to reveal too much, so she stays safe.
This dungeon was only the beginning.
He knows that well.
Far greater trials await, and he must prepare.
To clear his head, he turns on the TV. The news discusses a new type of dungeon, the thematic kind.
Experts explain these cannot be exited without full completion.
Raiders must roleplay a specific character and meet strict conditions, all to earn a unique item known as a god's gift.
Eric realizes this is his shot at real advancement.
First, he focuses on the reward from the raven, the golden apple. Such fruits grant gods eternal youth and life.
For Eric, it means faster recovery and a larger mana pool. The system warns it cannot be sold or given away.
Perfect timing, Eric recalls a themed dungeon opening soon in a city park. There he may obtain the boots of Thialvi, servant of Thor.
This item boosts agility, and warrior raiders will straight up clash to claim it. For Eric, these boots perfectly balance his stats as a spellsword.
With no other use for the apple, Eric decides to eat it on the spot.
To his surprise, the divine fruit tastes pretty mid.
Even so, its effects start kicking in soon after.
Eric feels lighter on his feet and fully recovered from the academy incident.
The next day, the amusement park hosting the dungeon opens its gates.
Eric scans the area awkwardly, unused to seeing the place so bright and cheerful.
He approaches the ticket booth, where the worker asks how many tickets he needs. Eric shows a guild card and identifies himself as a guild representative.
Leaning in, he quietly warns that a dungeon will open here soon.
Shortly after, all visitors are escorted out of the park.
Eric is allowed to stay as an official guild member.
He smirks, realizing just how much pull the guild has. Checking the time, he sees the dungeon is about to open. Space warps around him as the system signals activation. Eric looks around and knows this is playing out just like before. He remembers an interview with a self-proclaimed genius who cleared this dungeon. Sadly, her loose mouth drew the wrong attention, and she was later killed. Last time she claimed the boots, but now Eric plans to take them. The system announces the start of the Viking-themed dungeon. Story data loads as Eric syncs with the role of Thialfi. In this world's lore, Thialfi hates the Aesir after their followers killed his family. Eric recalls a different tale he read with his mother, where Thialfi helped Thor. A stranger suddenly snaps him back to reality. Awakening on a ship in ancient gear, Eric's eyes fly open. A man Eric recognizes as Frederick helps him stand. Something slams into the ship without warning. Everyone struggles to keep balance and avoid falling overboard. In the next moment, pirates leap onto the deck. Eric stays focused on his main quest, saving Reskva. He leaves Frederick to guard the ship and rushes toward the enemy vessel. Eric vaults cleanly from deck to deck. Stunning the pirates, he lands on their ship's bowsprit. His eyes lock onto a person tied to the mast. He recognizes the girl who once cleared this dungeon. Here, she plays Reskva, Thialvi's sister. Her name is Zoe Silva. She sees herself as an unmatched genius and future top raider. Instead, she finds herself trapped inside the amusement park. A bathroom break later, the park emptied and magic flooded the area. She rapidly calculates the odds and is shocked by her luck. Finding no answers, she decides to wait for raiders to rescue her. Unexpectedly, she notices a guy heading somewhere with purpose. Knowing he is not a raider, she chooses to tail him anyway. Eric sighs in frustration on spotting Zoe, since warnings told everyone to leave. Pirates raise their bows, aiming to kill the intruder. Eric casually raises a barrier, blocking the arrows. He channels energy into his fist and fires back a shockwave. One blow wipes out every archer in sight. Eric decides to chill, knowing even a thorn like Zoe can still be useful. He drops onto the deck before stunned pirates, who grip weapons but lack the guts to rush him. Eric rubs his neck, annoyed, urging them to rush together since he has zero time for duels. Minutes later, the deck is carpeted with unconscious pirates. Eric walks up to Zoe and tells her to stop pretending to be asleep. He makes it clear he knows she's playing the role of Reskva. Zoe clicks her tongue in response. Lifting her defiant gaze, she realizes Thialfi stands before her. Eric lowers himself to her level, smiling as if reading her thoughts. The next second, he smashes the mast so hard the wood cracks loudly. He warns Zoe not to do anything stupid and to behave. She nods back, face drained of color from fear. The system congratulates Eric on clearing the first Viking World quest. Eric and Zoe are transported back to the amusement park. Using her ability, Zoe quickly reads what kind of person sits before her. Still, it gives her no clue why this guy is even here. Eric cuts her thoughts short and asks about her real ability. She giggles, claiming it only boosts her sword skills. Eric is unimpressed and pushes her to try again. Zoe sticks to her story and refuses to budge. Eric shuts her down by naming the skill as accelerated thinking. Zoe falls completely silent. Eric calmly explains her skill, perfect for analyzing enemies and their plans. Suddenly, he gets up, deciding to move on alone since Zoe keeps lying. She rushes after him, begging not to be left alone in such a dangerous place. Eric counters by offering her a contract to secure her loyalty. The terms include total obedience and a ban on acting against him. Subordination is part of mind control, enforcing loyalty through a contract. Realizing she has no options, Zoe agrees to sign. Magical chains instantly appear around her neck and wrists. They vanish moments later, but the weight of control leaves her shaken. Above the park, a news helicopter circles the area. Reporters already know about two young people inside the dungeon. Parker is called in again, but this time he is stuck outside with a partner. His coworker complains that a promotion was close, but now everything feels shaky. They know public backlash over casualties could get them both demoted. Parker checks the dungeon files and spots a familiar face. Among them is Eric, the kid from the mall goblin incident. Parker is stunned to learn Eric joined the academy and a guild already. His partner panics at Parker's reaction, but Parker calms him down. He is now sure the dungeon will be cleared. Eric and Zoe move on to tackle the next objective. The next entry point is a haunted house. Zoe is clearly nervous, but keeps following Eric. Entering the second world, they face a massive Gothic castle. Zoe receives a video camera, assigned as operator, while Eric becomes the host. The system announces a new mission to escape the castle by uncovering its secrets. A creepy butler suddenly sneaks up and greets them. He introduces himself as Alfred, sent by the Countess to welcome guests. The butler opens the castle doors, inviting them inside. First, Alfred escorts them to the dining hall so they can recover from the journey. Walking through the corridor, Eric notices a strange vase. Lilies stand inside it, with a note saying it is for the most beautiful and foolish little girl. Zoe, meanwhile, spots a stunning portrait on the wall. Alfred explains it shows the mistress of the castle with her dog. After a while, they reach the hall, greeted by a fully set dining table. Alfred leaves the room, encouraging them to eat without restraint. Zoe senses that touching the food now would be a terrible idea. Instead, they decide to inspect the room while the butler is gone. Zoe asks for time to scan the hall before moving on. She activates accelerated thinking. Every detail sharpens instantly as she rapidly analyzes the surroundings. Soon, she announces she has learned a lot about the castle. Zoe deduces the owner of the castle is about 12 years old. She points to the chair at the head of the table, its seat higher than the rest. She also notes the furniture is low overall, with the most worn handles on lower drawers. With her analysis done, Eric suggests moving on. Suddenly, he stops in front of the door. Zoe urges him forward, but Eric realizes they are locked in. Panic grips Zoe as she fears being trapped here forever. Eric calms her, knowing no dungeon exists without an exit. Encouraged, Zoe decides to examine the room once more. Eric considers breaking the door, but feels his abilities are restricted here. Since Zoe once cleared this dungeon alone, the requirements cannot be extreme. Suddenly, Zoe calls him over, pale and clutching the camera. She is sure something is wrong and shows him the screen. Through the lens, the dining hall warps, revealing Alfred's corpse instead of food. Eric realizes the one who guided them was never Alfred. The system congratulates Eric for partially uncovering Alfred's secret. Zoe understands the camera, reveals what illusions hide. Eric tries to dispel the illusion completely with his skin. The system blocks it, forcing them to rely on the camera instead. Zoe inspects the carpet beneath the table. She senses the key to opening the door must be here. The only difference between illusion and truth is what lies on the table. Eric agrees and knows exactly which skill to use. He activates mana tracking, granted by Odin's Eye. Strange energy radiates from the pudding at the head of the table. Zoe pales as the camera shows a severed butler's head instead of dessert. Eric tries to reassure her. It is just an illusion. But she snaps. Rolling up her sleeves, she proves she is not afraid. Her fingers quickly close around a hidden key. With that, they escape the locked room into the corridor. Using the camera, they see the castle's true form, ruined and soaked in blood. Soon they reach half-open doors, which Eric identifies as a guest room. Through the lens, a massive pool of blood spills from inside. Ignoring Zoe's frightened protests, Eric steps in. He tells her to stay in the corridor while he checks the room. Inside, a crushing darkness and suffocating atmosphere greet him. Suddenly, he hears the rustle of fabric behind him. Turning around, Eric sees a girl in a white dress stained with dried blood. Moonlight reveals her pale hair and a mouth crudely sewn shut. A lightning flash suddenly silhouettes a massive shape looming behind Eric. The next moment, the hero wakes up inside a dungeon cell. While Zoe senses damp air and torture tools, Eric forces himself up. He figures a basement key must be nearby, and breaking out himself is easy. To stay quiet, he activates silence and smashes the cell door in one hit. Together, they carefully slip out of the cell. Suddenly, barking erupts as something fluffy slams into Eric's chest. It turns out to be a puppy with a key clenched in its teeth. Zoe warns him to put it down, but Eric feels no hostile mana. The key suggests the pup was guiding them out with it. Zoe insists it cannot be that simple and smells a trap. The animal bares its teeth at her in response. The system issues a new quest to find the Countess's diary. Eric knows the diary will reveal secrets and unlock all doors as a reward. Soon, the trio leaves the basement and cautiously scans the corridor. They realize they are on the 3rd floor, unsure where to go next. Zoe sighs, annoyed that their camera was taken away. Suddenly, she spots a ghostly figure at the far end of the hall. Eric steps closer, asking what the spirit is doing here. Zoe tugs his sleeve, urging him not to waste time on ghosts. Eric pulls free and repeats the question, sensing deep regret in her. The ghost only shakes her head in silence. Eric guesses she is here to help them. This time, the spirit nods. Eric asks where the Countess's diary is hidden. The ghost points toward a door at the other end of the corridor. Eric thanks her and promises help if fate allows it. Beyond the door waits darkness and absolute silence. Toys litter the floor, but Eric focuses on finding the diary. Zoe heads straight for the desk, but Eric stops her. He suggests using her skill first, since the desk is an obvious bait. Eric approaches the desk together with the puppy. The pages tell of a young countess who lost her parents early and ruled alone. She once met a nameless girl, gave her a name, and they became friends. One day, Alfred went to town, and when he returned, he felt wrong to her. Soon after, she heard screams from her governess and cook. Then Alfred and her friend broke down her door, and she knew they meant to kill her. After the final entry, the diary abruptly ends. The system announces all skill restrictions have been lifted. Eric realizes a monster infiltrated the castle and slaughtered everyone, including the Countess. Zoe suddenly suggests it could have been a doppelganger. Eric turns as her body begins to twist and change. Behind the monster, an entire army of butlers forms. The system congratulates Eric for uncovering all secrets and orders him to escape alive. The doppelganger whips its tendrils wildly, ready to strike. Grabbing the puppy, Eric leaps aside. He feels relieved the monster finally dropped its mask. Eric is done watching the creature's cheap act and is ready to end it. The doppelganger praises the hero's sharp mind, sounding almost impressed. In the next heartbeat, the monster lunges straight into attack. A moment later, the ceiling of the main hall collapses and Eric crashes down. The monster follows him, falling right after. Still midair, Eric fires up chain lightning and strikes the doppelganger. The creature fails to dodge, but its shapeless body lets the attack pass through. Eric lands smoothly on the carpet below. A doppelganger ranks as second tier, perfectly copying a human's looks and skills. Yet by its own raw power alone, it counts as a third-tier threat. The monster stretches its tendrils again, pushing Eric to hand over his body. Instead, it falls into Eric's trap as lightning cages snap shut around. The floor cracks under the barrage, and the creature's weight collapsing inward. Eric peers into the hole, watching the remains buried under rubble. The doppelganger wanted to be human, but its nature would never allow it. Eric smiles at the puppy in his arms, silently praising Zoe's guts. As they prepare to leave, a faint rustle echoes behind Eric. It turns out to be the young Countess. The girl waves goodbye with a gentle smile. Thus ends the second trial of the themed dungeon. Afterward, they rest and grab food, while Eric reviews his new reward skills. Command doesn't hype him much, But Illusion feels clutch for what's ahead.
Zoe still sulks, annoyed he did not admit recognizing her earlier.
Eric reminds her that secrecy boosted their survival odds and urges moving on. Soon, they reach a strange crowd as the show host Bruin calls for attention. The host invites everyone to join his parade. Fireworks blast skyward as dancers and musicians swirl around the stage. Bruin suddenly calls Eric and Zoe by name, praising their earlier clears. The final challenge turns out to be a game of tag. He points to a nearby portal and hints at monsters pouring from it. Eric senses there is more to it than that. Bruin adds that monster strength scales with player count and abilities. The host reaches out, glowing as he scans the heroes. Clapping in delight, he declares their foes will be special rank monsters. Eric tries to object, knowing such a matchup is insane. Suddenly, blazing light washes over them. Surtur, the fire giant, materializes before their eyes. The system offers Eric a choice: flee or defeat the monster to win. Surtur existed long before Ymir itself. His purpose was to burn the entire world to ash. His sword burns so hot it can melt anything. Eric barely yanks Zoe aside before an attack lands. Zoe breaks down in fear, unable to imagine any escape. The giant demolishes buildings with casual swings of his blade. Eric knows close combat means instant death. Suddenly, Zoe shouts that she's spotted their objective. A sign nailed to a pillar points toward a carousel marked as the goal. Eric activates Speed Boost, gripping Zoe's hand and sprinting for the carousel. The giant rages on, demanding the summoner show themselves. The heroes barely dodge waves of searing fire. Eric realizes this cannot last and suggests splitting up to reach the carousel from different paths. He hurls the girl toward the goal, boosting her speed like a launch spell. Eric steps out to face the giant, pulling all the heat onto himself. He cleanly hops away from the incoming strike aimed to erase him. Instead, he lands atop a chapel roof, dragging the monster's focus off the girl. In a blink, the giant smashes the tower with one brutal blow. Suddenly, it spots Zoe, nearly reaching the objective. A fireball flies at the carousel and obliterates it. The system flags the target destroyed and hints that only a hidden quest remains. Eric realizes there is no exit left except fighting the giant head on. Surtur raises his sword, ready to keep the pressure on. Zoe watches from an alley, hidden in the shadows. She knows if this drags on, they both die here. She triggers her skill, forcing a plan to help Eric clutch the win. Soon, the entire amusement park is swallowed by flames. Eric starts to tire, stuck in pure evasion with his current power. Zoe catches up, yelling directions on where to jump next. Following her calls, Eric dodges lethal blows and shifts toward the trap zone. Earlier, they hid briefly, and Zoe told him about massive water tanks. She suggested luring the monster there and using water to weaken it. Eric decides it is a solid play. A real giant would be impossible, but a projection can be cracked this way. Reaching the spot, Eric suddenly stops. Surtur pities the frail human, thinking Eric accepted his fate. Eric only smirks, unfazed by a being weaker than the Aesir gods. That disrespect sends Surtur into rage. He unleashes a torrent of fire, but it burns through an illusion. Instead of Eric, shattered water tanks burst before the giant. With the monster weakened, Eric draws his sword and charges to finish it. The blade plunges straight into the giant's heart. The giant warns him not to get cocky, since the real Surtur would be untouchable. The body fades away as the system confirms all 3 trials cleared. Zoe peeks out, realizing it is truly over. Eric immediately equips Thialfi's boots, gaining insane speed. He knew they were rare, but first-class boots are next-level loot. Eric looks at Zoe, confused by her sudden silence. She clasps her hands behind her back, clearly hiding something. Eric exhales in disappointment and reminds her of the contract. Zoe reveals the Seal of Reskva, boosting power and granting bravery. The seal erases fear and boosts agility and strength. Moments later, Bruin appears before them. Eric notes the contest was rough, so he and Zoe are heading home. Bruin leans in, wishing Eric safe travels as a chosen enemy. The barrier over the park shatters as the themed dungeon vanishes. Reporters rush in, ready to grill the survivors. Eric and Zoe exit the gates, greeted by earlier evacuees. A raider pushes through the crowd to ask questions. Suddenly, Eric vanishes in plain sight, leaving no trace behind. Zoe is left alone to face the reporters. Meanwhile, Eric is already home, kicking back. Luckily, the news mentions only the incident and 2 survivors, not him. Eric suspects the guild had a hand in burying the information. Only thanks to Thialfi's boots did he dodge reporters and unwanted spotlight. He wonders how insane their speed will get once he fully masters them. On top of that, he received Eternal Flame of Surtur to empower his weapon.
The fight with the giant also exposed how weak he still is. He beats Surtur through tricks, not raw power. And that truth stings. His goal is to become so terrifying that enemies fear approaching at all. Eric knows he must learn from past failures and protect family and friends. The next day at the academy, he gets hit with complaints from his friends. Paula admits she was freaking out since she could not reach him at all. Eric explains it was not intentional and asks her to ease up. Nadine also checks on how he feels after the dungeon. Eric assures her he feels completely fine. Soon, the lecture begins. They are greeted by Isabella Rake, the magic computation instructor. Assistants walk the rows, handing out textbooks to students. Isabella explains the books hold both basic and advanced magic calculation. Students flip them open in shock, finding the pages totally blank. Eric casually scans the runes etched on the cover. The instructor notices and asks what he sees there. Eric states that the cover is written in runes. Isabella frowns, knowing most students need a week just to see symbols. She realizes Eric truly is gifted, just as the chairman claim. Next, she asks him to explain what the runes actually mean. Thanks to Odin's Eye, Eric reads the title with ease. After class, students head to the library to decode the runes. Eric finds the book fascinating, unlocking new spell possibilities. His friends progress at very different speeds through the material. Paula struggles most and reminds everyone she taught Eric magic first. Eric calmly notes that students often surpass their teachers. Nadine announces she finally decoded the first page. A few days pass, and Eric aces the magic theory test. Setting studies aside for now, he focuses on other ways to grow stronger. Effort matters, but money often decides real growth. Coming from the future, Eric knows exactly where profits lie. He gathers Gilbert, Nadine, Paula, and Wilbert to name a potion shop. Sadly, none of the suggested names satisfy Eric. Paula urges him to think carefully, noting potion shops are rare for a reason. Nadine agrees. Gilbert sees huge potential in the field and doubts it will fail. Eric stays silent, knowing a future tycoon sits right beside him. Suddenly, the door flies open and Zoe storms in, glaring at everyone. She storms inside, accusing Eric of enchanting her into helplessness. Eric recalls the contract and knows its effects cannot be undone. Paula and Nadine look disappointed, thinking he threatened a child. Pushed to the edge, Eric invites Zoe to sit and join the brainstorming. She quickly dives into the discussion. Sadly, her presence adds more chaos than value. Paula fumes that Eric ignores her idea, and he finally lets her speak. Unexpectedly, she suggests a solid name: Elixir Workshop. Elixir also refers to the Philosopher's Stone, said to heal and revive. Wilbert likes the name too, and already sees how that branding will boost the business. With that, the discussion comes to an end. A few more days of classes pass by. After one lesson, Eric approaches Isabella to ask about the topic he studies. She goes pale when she sees a 4th rank magic textbook. Failing to get anything useful from her, Eric settles back into the library grind. Hitting a dead end, he realizes he needs help from another expert. He decides to meet Dahlia and ask her for help with 4th rank calculations. This rank covers creation, destruction, and amplification of magic. Eric admits that studying these formulas alone is brutal. Dahlia replies that the core of the 4th rank is figuring things out yourself. Mastering it is required to earn the title of 1st rank raider. Still, she cannot abandon her protege after he asks for help. She hands Eric a ribbon and says it will help him grasp amplification. Eric accepts it eagerly, ready to do anything to get stronger. The ribbon turns out to be the one used to bind Fenrir, limiting the wearer's power. Dahlia asks Eric to use only one spell during training. She explains this will help him analyze the spell formula. She suggests something simple, like a magic arrow. That same day, Eric puts her advice into practice. With reduced power, Draugr in the simulation easily block his attacks. His entire body feels slow and heavy. The state is worse than expected, but he stubbornly keeps training. The next day after class, Paula decides to question him. She jokes that she can smell his pain patch from the hallway. Eric, looking completely worn out, insists that he is fine. He thanks them for worrying, but reminds them they have their own problems. Paula is stuck decoding runes, and Nadine risks extra lessons if she fails her tests. The girls follow his advice and head to the library. Eric goes back to training instead. Eventually, he perfectly clears the 41st test level. The system reports improved formula comprehension and a new passive skill gained. After training, Eric decides to take a walk. Suddenly, the park around him goes eerily quiet. He senses an ambush and calls for the enemy to show themselves. Eric activates a detection spell. It reveals 3 ravens perched in the trees. One of them lunges straight at him. Eric dodges its strikes with Odin's Eye guiding him. Catching the right moment,
he counters with a clean hit. At that instant, the other two ravens rush in. Eric is shocked they attack inside Academy grounds. Clearly, Bert's doing. He activates energy arrows to strike back. Suddenly, Eric senses a fourth presence. From swirling dark magic, his own father appears before him. Eric reacts instantly, unleashing chain lightning at him. His father deflects every strike with a single sword swing. He counters immediately, forcing Eric to barely leap aside. Even so, the attack grazes his side. Eric stares in horror at the scar carved into the ground by that blow. The man is surprised that his son has grown so aggressive during their time apart. Eric clutches his side and snaps back, never having seen that man as his real father. The man steps closer and asks whether the enemies of the Aesir contacted Eric. Eric's eyes widen at the question. That reaction alone gives his father the answer. Eric barely raises a barrier as the man strikes. The defense shatters, unable to withstand the raw force. Eric realizes this is the true might of a first-rank raider. He wonders if his father plans to kill him now, but the answer is no. After a pause, the man decides crippling his son would be enough to remove an obstacle. Suddenly, foreign magic interrupts him. Turning around, he sees a mysterious cat. The man questions why his business is being interrupted, citing a contract. The cat calmly responds that no contract was broken. The cat leaps down and transforms into a girl. Eric's father asks why she complicates things with such actions. She ignores him and cuts her own arm, letting blood flow. The drops hit the ground and begin to move on their own. From the spilled blood, clawed hands form and lunge at the man. He blocks the assault with his sword. The girl smiles and reminds him that Eric is their last remaining chance. The man scoffs, saying Loki must be weak to rely on a mere human. Unexpectedly, he lowers his sword and retreats, agreeing to withdraw. He warns that next time anyone blocks his path, they will pay. The girl reminds him the contract does not forbid killing Odin's ravens. The man turns and vanishes into a dark cloud. Eric collapses to his knees, coughing up blood. The girl smiles at him and introduces herself as Hela, Hel's alter ego. She explains she is his watcher and mentor for the 5 trials. They head to his home so he can recover. Hela invites him to ask any questions he has. Eric asks who that man truly was. She reveals he did not face his father, but Hugin, Odin's raven. Hugin governs thought, but borrowed memory influence from Munin. All of it was to watch over the chosen one from prophecy. She reaches for Eric and offers to show him instead of explaining. Everything vanishes as the system reports recalled memories. Eric finds himself in his home's storage room, facing the living room. He watches Hugin, disguised as his father, beating his younger self. Eric recalls this as the moment he first awakened mana. From then on, his days were filled with cruelty and violence. His mother tried to protect him, but it never lasted long. The storage door fades again, pulling Eric elsewhere. The first thing he notices is the scent of incense. Then he sees himself crying in his mother's arms. Lifting his gaze, Eric sees an altar for the dead. Air leaves his lungs, not because of the incense. He realizes memories he should never have lost were erased. Images surface of his father treating him to ice cream. He remembers the perfect peace that once filled those moments. Tears well up in Eric's eyes. He finally remembers that his real father died when he was still a child. Eric wakes up in his room as Hela explains he is finally free from memory manipulation. The hero cannot grasp how anyone could do such things to a child. The goddess explains that even before his birth, all knew he would become a great enemy of the Aesir. 10,000 years ago, Ragnarok occurred, and the story of the Chosen One began. Back then, those who opposed the Aesir were defeated. Odin spared the survivors only if they signed a binding contract. By it, none of the spared beings could ever harm the Aesir gods. The defeated side had to fully obey Odin's will, and many suffered because of it. Later, the 3 sisters, the Norns, delivered a prophecy. They foretold that in the second Ragnarok, the weakest being would defeat Odin and open a new world. That being was destined to be Eric. Eric clenches his fists, realizing all of Odin's enemies rely on him to end their foe. A sharp question forms in his mind about Odin's true plan. Hela answers simply that the All-Father seeks to rule all 9 realms. That includes Midgard, the world of humans. For now, Eric and his world are protected by the prophecy's power, beyond even the gods. When Ragnarok arrives, all limits will fall, including the force shielding the hero. Then, Eric is meant to die by the hands of the Aesir. Hela corrects herself, reminding him he already died once. She asks if he desires revenge on the gods to protect what he holds dear. She reminds him she is his mentor for the 5 trials. She promises to give him the chance to become strong enough to kill Odin. Meanwhile, Gilbert trains hard, preparing for his duel with Eric at the festival. Suddenly, he is summoned to the chairman's office over the loudspeaker. Bert Cruz openly discusses filtering weak students from strong ones. He mentions an upcoming guild assignment planned for the near future. Gilbert overhears this while standing outside the office door. He realizes Bert orchestrated the earlier incidents involving students. Gilbert decides acting rashly and confronting Bert now would be foolish. He enters the office after formally asking permission. Gilbert resolved to discuss this matter with his friends. Meanwhile, Eric attends a class on magical calculations. Isabella announces guild participation will begin in 3 days, all prepared by the chairman. She adds that guilds have already requested specific students. Eric, Paula, Nadine, and 3 others were invited by Dahlia's guild. Eric now understands why Dahlia showed interest in talented students. Isabella dismisses class, asking everyone to submit forms by evening. Paula is ecstatic at the thought of meeting Dahlia, her idol, up close. Eric suspects Gilbert was also invited by a powerful guild. Suddenly, all 3 friends receive a message from Gilbert at once. He asks them to gather at the potion workshop to discuss something important. Once seated together, Gilbert explains Bert Cruz's scheme. Paula is shocked by such budgeting methods involving student death. Wilbert recalls corruption scandals at the academy surfacing every year without resolution. Eric realizes guild participation this time is far more dangerous than he remembers. Before his return in time, he heard of students dying due to so-called accidents. Gilbert reminds them only the 5 of them know this truth. For now, to him, that means the fate of weaker students rests in their hands. Eric exhales hard. As much as he wants to jump in with future knowledge, reckless moves would only wreck everything. Paula suddenly stands up, deciding there is nothing to debate. She reminds them that student lives are at risk, and sitting idle is not an option. Wilbert agrees. Even scared, he is ready to help however he can. Nadine backs them up without hesitation. Eric smirks at their fire. He almost forgot his friends are born raiders, chasing loot, slaying monsters, saving people. He rises and suggests building a plan now that everyone is in. Later, Eric meets Isabella and claims he has mastered 4th rank magic. He is surprised she looks troubled instead of proud of his progress. He reaches out, making it clear he came with a request. Eric activates his mind control skill on her. As expected, he has grown far stronger and can influence her. In a calm tone, he asks the controlled Isabella to reveal Bert Cruz's plan. 3 days later, Eric, Paula, Nadine, and Gilbert stand before Dahlia's guild. Paul greets them and leads them inside. He shows them the guild halls, the museum, and the training rooms. At the end, they finally meet Dahlia herself. Once tea is served, Paula cannot hold back and eagerly asks for an autograph. Eric almost forgot how hard she fangirls over his mentor. Dahlia is glad he found such friends, and he hints there is more ahead. Gilbert is shocked they already know each other. Dahlia explains she is Eric's mentor. Paula jumps up, annoyed that Eric never introduced them sooner. Dahlia admits that their closeness to Eric is why she invited them all. Many know of Bert's corruption, but few can act against it. She says protecting students needs a plan, and Paul projects a mana map of the area. 2 massive mana sources glow clearly within territories of 2 guilds. Paul notes that any dungeon opening will likely appear in those zones. Dahlia plans to send patrols there to react fast if needed. Eric cuts in, warning that Bert likely planned everything in detail. Instead of drawing attention to Dahlia's guild, he suggests saving students personally. Using a phone, they locate one guild emitting strange energy. Paula quickly notices the place looks abandoned. Paul watches everything from a distance. Eric thanks him telepathically for the backup. Paul praises Eric's dedication and wishes them luck. Meanwhile, Dahlia asks Serana to explain the place the group entered. It turns out the guild is fake, used to dodge tax. Some guilds exist only as covers and leave no records. Serana suspects Bert himself created it for dirty work. Dahlia prepares countermeasures in case things go sideways. Eric and his friends slip into the fake guild. Inside, dense, dark mana presses down on them. Moving carefully, they advance through a pitch-black corridor. Suddenly, energy begins to converge around them. Eric warns everyone to run, but it is too late as a magic seal ignites underfoot. The system announces a transfer to Svartalheim. The group is thrown into the realm of dark elves. Eric remembers that in myth, dark elves rival even gods in power. Of course, this dungeon runs a nerfed version of their powers, classic instance rules kicking in hard. Even so, Eric sees the real goal clearly. This place exists to wipe out students. Gilbert wonders who Bert truly is, if he wields magic this advanced. Eric agrees that a normal man, even with connections, cannot meddle with other worlds. That sparks the thought that someone far stronger stands behind Bert. As they debate their next move, footsteps echo nearby. Paul suddenly steps out of the darkness. The group rushes him, demanding how he got here. Paul explains Eric called him as backup in case things went south. With regret, he admits his presence alone did not fix the situation. He recognizes the area as Svartalheim, where even first-rank raiders barely survive. So far, no one has found a reliable way to clear dungeons like this. Luckily for them, future tactics for this place were eventually discovered. Eric saw enough clears in the future to trust his own judgment. He tells the team not to panic and promises they will all walk out alive. Cracking his knuckles, he suggests searching for survivors first. The group advances and soon reaches a pitch-black section of the tunnel. Nadine prepares a flash spell, but Eric has something better. Instead of one light orb, he summons dozens that float around them. Seeing their stunned faces, he explains he leveled up the spell. Nadine notes that skill leveling like this is usually first rank only. After hours of travel, the group decides to rest. Eric extinguishes the floating lights. He explains dark elves see perfectly in darkness, so they must adapt. To recover from the oppressive mana, everyone drinks potions. Gilbert senses survivors should be past the next fork. Eric uses a skill learned from a senior, probing ahead with mana. He feels the dungeon boss waiting straight ahead. He cannot scan other paths before a mana-charged spear flies at Nadine. Weapons are drawn instantly as battle begins. Dark elves emerge from all sides, closing in. Paula reacts fast, raising a defensive barrier. Nadine follows with a slowing spell. The dark elves' movements drop to a crawl. Nadine jumps into combat right after. Gilbert rushes to support her, blocking strikes with his shield. Paul joins in, charging the enemies with twin daggers. Eric adds pressure, activating chain lightning. Multiple arcs spear through elven bodies. Eric recalls that elven gear is made of pure magic. Using universal derivation, he dismantles their defenses completely. Weapons and armor dissolve into thin air. Eric orders everyone to rely on fire magic only. He burns an incoming arrow and signals Gilbert to draw aggro. Gilbert triggers provocation, pulling all enemy focus onto himself. Instantly, every elf locks onto him. Eric directs Paul to strike those caught by provocation. Paul activates stealth, closing in unseen. The elves never realize they are being attacked, failing to dodge. Eric finishes the survivors with a crushing fire strike. Seeing outsiders wipe out their kin with ease, the remaining dark elves freeze, hesitation cracking their pride. Paula decides to press the advantage and launches a fireball. As elite enemies, they survive the blast and rush forward anyway. Nadine jumps in next, firing a volley of flaming arrows. The strike lands true, pinning the elves in place with burning shafts. The final blow comes from Gilbert's sword, clean and decisive. Eric urges them onward, knowing time is slipping fast. He senses several surviving students, the ones lured into this trap. The rest are beyond saving. So Eric pushes everyone to move. Nearby, a girl barely standing drags her injured companion toward an exit. She stumbles, strength gone, realizing she cannot rise again. Tears stream down as she curses her own weakness. A warm, steady hand grips her shoulder, and she turns in fear. Eric's group stands there, arriving just in time. He praises her resolve and promises they will handle everything. Unable to respond, she collapses unconscious. Paula and Gilbert give the survivors mana resistance potions to stabilize them. Once awake, Eric explains they are trapped in Svartalheim. He introduces his team and vows they will save everyone. He then asks what happened to the others. The boy says the rest were captured, and the guide vanished. He and his friend escaped the elf's sight and fled. Sadly, mana overdose soon caught up with them. Eric sees how painful it was to abandon their comrades. He assures them the blame is not theirs. Eric asks where the captured students were taken. The girl explains the dark elves have a king, and all captives were dragged to him. She points to a tunnel she used to escape. Eric thanks them, then asks who escorted them from the guild. Rage twists the boy's face as he names Instructor Fletcher. Eric decides his friends must stay behind, despite Paula's protests. He chooses to face the dungeon boss alone to save the weakening students. The girls argue it is too dangerous to go solo. To their shock, Gilbert supports Eric's plan. Eric explains none of them can match the elves evenly, but someone must guard the survivors. Paul agrees as well, asking Eric to retreat if it turns lethal. Gilbert swears to protect everyone with all his strength. Eric says his goodbyes, promising a quick reunion. Minutes after he leaves, Paul hears a strange rustle in a tunnel. He warns the students to stay quiet. They instantly sense something terrifying approaching. Before Paul can draw a weapon, a surge of energy severs his arm, A group of dark elves emerges from the cave shadows.
Meanwhile, Eric reaches the massive gates of the boss chamber. Knowing his friends are exposed, he resolves to finish this fast. With one hand, he shoves the gates open. At the center, on a lit throne, sits the elven king beneath a blazing beam. The king smiles, hinting he prepared something special. Suddenly, Eric's earring begins to react violently. He realizes his link to Paul is fading, meaning something has gone terribly wrong. The ornament was given to Eric by Dahlia herself. Through it, she would know if things spiraled out of control and intervention was needed. The doors to the chamber slam shut behind him. Eric now has only one way out: surviving whatever awaits inside. He summons a massive fire spell, flames roaring around his body. Madness burns in his eyes as he promises death to everyone in the cave. Wrapped in blazing fire, he advances straight toward the enemy. Suddenly, he notices blood on the elves' faces, clearly not their own. Eric vows to make them cough up whatever they just devoured. Meanwhile, his friends are locked in a brutal clash with a group of elves. Paula raises a defensive barrier, knowing it will not last long. Gilbert dodges cleanly and strikes back at the enemy. He realizes these elves are far stronger than the ones before. Seeking answers, he demands to know who leads them. The leader reveals himself as Kel, a highborn elf and captain of the royal guard. Paula tightens her grip on her staff, sensing a foe beyond first-rank level. Gilbert clenches his sword, refusing to fall here despite the danger. His mind still clings to the duel Eric promised him. To gain speed, he discards his shield. Paula tries to stop him as he leaves the barrier, but fails. Standing before the enemy, Gilbert unleashes all his inner power. Even Kel is forced back, stunned that a human reached such strength. But this reckless surge takes a heavy toll on Gilbert. His face pales, blood staining his lips. As he coughs, the system warns his body cannot endure such power. Sensing weakness, Kel orders his warriors to attack. Gilbert focuses, blasting them away with raw energy waves. Then he charges straight at Kel himself. He knows victory is impossible against such a foe. His only hope is buying time until help arrives. Barely dodging an elven strike, Gilbert leaps aside. He repays the move by rushing back in. Kel blocks the blow, though with visible effort. In the end, he hurls Gilbert away. The system alerts that Gilbert's body is beginning to break down. Kel gives him no respite, attacking again at lightning speed. Gilbert parries with his sword, the force smashing his back into the wall. Knowing he cannot last, he prepares his final gambit. Channeling everything through his blade, he fires a massive energy wave. When the dust clears, Kel is shielded by another elf. In the next instant, Kel's sword pierces Gilbert's chest. At the same time, Eric battles an army of elves with chain lightning. In the far corner, he spots what truly matters. Half-dead students sit imprisoned in a cage by the wall. The Dark Elf King watches the carnage with amusement. He believes Eric a fool for thinking victory against such forces possible. Eric recalls being branded weak many times in his past. Suddenly, dense mana floods the chamber, choking the elves. As its source, Eric declares he will never be seen as weak again. Enraged by his soldiers' fear, the king orders them to charge the hero. Snapped out of the trance, the Alpha Elves rush in for the kill. Eric fires back by activating Chains of Inferno. The skill lets him shred multiple enemies in one sweep. Fallen bodies are instantly replaced by fresh warriors. Eric feels thankful for a real chance to test the new power. The remaining elves burn away, screaming as infernal flames consume them. The Elf King swallows hard, suddenly outnumbered. Rage erupts as he swears Eric will not leave alive. Eric walks straight toward him, stepping over fallen soldiers. Despite his threats, the king cannot even move. He cannot grasp how a mere human reached this level. In the next second, Eric's fist crashes into his face. Meanwhile, Gilbert collapses, bleeding out onto the stone. Nadine turns pale, crushed by her own helplessness. She remembers this is not the first time weakness led to death. At that moment, an elf turns toward her to finish the rest. Gripping her throat, he weighs killing her or tearing pieces off. Suddenly, blinding light floods the cave. Dahlia approaches, clad in full armor. She sees Paul and Gilbert unconscious in pools of blood. The other students barely remain standing. She activates Sacrifice to save her people. Healing many at once, she burns her own life force without hesitation. After that, Dahlia turns toward Kel. With a single motion, she unleashes compressed mana at him. The blast does more than strike. It erases part of his body. Dahlia then focuses on Paul and Gilbert's critical wounds. Her healing restores Paul's severed arm back to his body. Gilbert's condition is far worse, demanding far more effort. Even then, the system warns recovery will take a long time. After long minutes,
His condition finally stabilizes. Dahlia smiles, noting Gilbert will sleep for days, but survive. Paula and Nadine release breath in relief. Once the crisis ends, Dahlia notices Eric is missing. The students avert their eyes, avoiding her gaze. One survivor admits they let Eric go alone to the boss room. To everyone's shock, Dahlia smiles and says he will be fine. Meanwhile, the Dark Elf King lies beaten on the floor, blood flowing. Realizing he cannot win alone, he tries to flee to warn others. Eric cuts him off instantly and triggers chain lightning. Paralyzed, the Elf King is slammed to the ground. Still defiant, he invokes frozen ground. In an instant, ice spreads across the entire cave. Instead of fear, Eric responds with a grin. He pulls out an empty card, choosing to record the spell. Using Universal Source, he shatters the icebound magic. Pressing hands to the king's head, Eric unleashes fire. As the body disintegrates, the system confirms the second point of no return. Eric bolts toward the cages holding the students. Tearing the bars apart, he confirms the captives are still alive. Eric decides to trigger Sacrifice to help everyone recover. Suddenly, another hand appears beside his own. Dahlia has already found him and joins in healing the injured. After that, everyone is safely escorted out of the dungeon and the fake guild building. Dahlia says she will be glad to see them all in her guild later. At that moment, a bus pulls up and Serana steps out. Dahlia asks her aide to take care of the students and bring them to the guild. When it comes to herself and Eric, she notes they still have business to finish. After what happened to the students, Fletcher checked if the plan worked, watching from hiding. Suddenly, he spots Eric through a window. Eric smashes the glass with his bare fist and grabs the instructor by the throat. He yanks him from his seat and slams him onto the ground. Dahlia looks down on him with contempt, questioning why he is even here. Fletcher lunges forward, refusing to go down easily. He activates a magic orb borrowed from Bert's. In the next instant, he appears behind Dahlia with a raised blade. She effortlessly dodges his strike. In response, she demands to know why he tried to kill students. Fletcher refuses to explain himself and grips a strange sphere tighter. Dahlia recognizes it as an energy suppression core. She gathers an attack, warning that such tricks do not work on a raider of her rank. Eric realizes Fletcher used the same technique for the seal inside the guild. That is why he never sensed the trap beforehand. Magical storm clouds gather above the instructor. Dozens of lightning bolts crash down on him at once. After the strike, only a cracked magic sphere remains on the ground. Once the guild reveals everything publicly, reporters surround the academy. The academy's reputation crumbles, and Bert faces corruption charges. Isabella calmly tells the man many people are waiting to speak with him. He snarls back that he is not giving interviews right now. The chairman knows someone inside the academy betrayed him, but not who. In the end, he decides to act decisively against the traitor. A few days later, Gilbert wakes up and returns to classes. Eric supports his friend, urging him to keep following his heart. Back home, Eric examines the rewards from defeating the dungeon boss. Along with materials and treasure, he gained a new skill. Reading closer, he learns it allows him to create weapons and armor mid-battle. He recalls some mages can do this, but he never saw value in it before. To test it, he forms a mana dagger that fits perfectly in his hand. Instantly, countless ideas flood his mind on how to use it. His first thought is not combat, but selling these items. Even third-tier weapons sell for tens of thousands of dollars. Thanks to the mistletoe branch, his crafted weapons will be top quality. Soon, exam season arrives. Many students dread it, as academy trials are notoriously brutal. Gilbert and Nadine face deeper issues than simple lack of focus. They simply cannot learn through theory alone. Of course, Eric and Paula cannot refuse when asked for help. Paula immediately takes charge of discipline during study sessions. Eric focuses on building a prep plan, hoping the results will pay off. The first test hits Nadine hard, pushing her limits from the start. Paula reassures Eric that they did everything humanly possible to help her. Still, they need backup too, so they turn to Wilbert for support. He honestly admits neither of them has even a shred of alchemy talent. Even so, he offers a workaround instead of backing out. He mentions moon fireflies, a rare ingredient whose chitin boosts potion effects. Eric already knows who to ask and boldly heads to the upperclassmen floor. There, he greets an old acquaintance from the rookie ceremony. Back then, she was among the first who tried to take Eric down. Raven, as expected, wants nothing to do with him. Eric still asks her to hear him out before shutting him down. To get her attention, he drops a number worth 30 million. Money talks, and Raven suddenly feels like listening. Eric explains his plan and why her detection skills are key. He also adds they will bring along a gifted alchemist for support. Together with Wilbert and Paula, the four head into the mountains. Soon, they reach a forest zone, where sunlight barely breaks through. There, the alchemist finds traces of a moon firefly on a tree. That is Raven's cue to show what she can really do. Using her skill, she tracks faint traces leading to the target. Trusting her senses, she tells everyone to follow her lead. After hours of travel, they reach a lake swarming with glowing insects. Eric quickly notices the fireflies are far larger than normal bugs. Wilbert once said, "Monster mana warped common creatures into threats." Eric first tries slowing them down with enhanced gravity. Sadly, the insects are too strong for it to matter much. Realizing this, Eric switches tactics, refusing to let a single one escape. He shapes a mana cage that the insects cannot break out of. Turning to the others, Eric urges them to start capturing immediately. Wilbert goes in first, while Paula hesitates outside due to fear. Eric does not let her slack off and pushes her to help anyway. Using special magic containers, they safely catch the fireflies. Soon, they return to Wilbert's workshop, where Paula and Eric retry the failed potion. This time, they add the firefly essence without hesitation. Instantly, the potion clears and shifts into a new color. Wilbert explains the essence purifies potions while amplifying key effects. As they celebrate, Nadine and Gilbert consider using this trick for extra points. The alchemist keeps quiet that even now, the success rate is only 50%. A few days later, exam results arrive, and not everyone is happy. Paula is fired up to bury her shame under higher scores. Next comes the practical exam, which requires forming teams. Each student gets a cost based on current grades. The first task is forming a 4-person team under 50 points total. With Nadine, Gilbert, Paula, and Eric all rated high, they cannot team up. In his past life, Eric had only 6 points and got drafted by a strong team. That experience turned out far from fun. Suddenly, a guy walks up to Eric's desk and suggests teaming up. One look at his face, and Eric recognizes him instantly. A memory flashes of that guy once telling him to know his place. This time, the same guy smiles and offers to form a team together. Eric scans Gabe with a cold stare and shuts the idea down without hesitation. Even Gabe's low cost, paired with strong skills, fails to sway him. Eric makes it clear he has zero intention of teaming up with him. Instead, he walks over to familiar faces, Anna and Colt. They gladly accept his offer and back him up without doubt. Gabe is left grinding his teeth, burning with rage and humiliation. He remembers those two from the time they left Eric alone in the mock dungeon. Storming off, Gabe vows to make Eric regret this choice. To talk things through, Eric, Anna, and Colt head to a cafe. The two friends still cannot grasp why Eric chose them. Anna recalls they barely helped and even abandoned him once. Colt adds they were labeled weak and left behind in the fake guild. Eric calms them, saying he will not use them as scapegoats if things go south. He knows their low value comes from not clearing the dungeon, not real weakness. Anna then asks who the 4th teammate will be. At that moment, the cafe doors swing open. Eric declares Paula as the final member of their squad. Paula looks far from impressed by this lineup. Anna and Colt also feel uneasy under her sharp gaze. Eric speaks up first, reminding them that he and Nadine made the right call back then. He outlines his plan to crush Bert Cruz during this exam. Before long, the day of the practical exam arrives. Instead of Fletcher, a new instructor named Dorsey takes the stage. He warns that the exam will be broadcast live nationwide. Magic ignites beneath the teams, pulling them into a pocket dimension again. This time, they land in a blazing land of fire. The system announces their task to clear the dungeon and claim the boss essence. The first level requires finding stairs leading deeper. Colt immediately notes how hostile and scorching the place feels. Eric explains this dungeon mirrors Muspelheim, realm of fire giants. He suggests mapping the area first to plan their moves. Paula reminds him about searching for frost grass. The longer they stay, the harsher it gets, and the grass will counter that. Eric activates Mana Survey to scan nearby threats and resources. Soon, he pinpoints where the frost grass grows. Reaching the spot, Anna stares in awe at the strange plant. Eric advises stuffing their pockets and keeping it in inventory at all times. Since Colt handles alchemy best, Eric assigns potion crafting to him. Moments later, Eric catches movement in the air. A camera drone hovers above, signaling the live broadcast has begun. He is not thrilled about performing, but sees potential benefits. Using his skill, he warns the team of 4 rank 3 monsters approach. Everyone draws weapons and scans their surroundings. Soon, creatures like living lava droplets emerge. Eric warns them not to get close as the monsters explode. The team waits patiently for Eric's signal. Only when the system confirms viewers are tuning in does Eric call the attack. Paula strikes first with a water arrow. Anna hurls her sword at a monster. Eric follows up by chilling the field with ice rain to set the tempo. In his plan, the audience itself becomes the weapon meant to finish Bert Cruz for good. The fight with the fire slimes soon comes to an end. The team starts to feel the heat, climbing fast. Eric suggests finding shelter to brew a potion that resists extreme heat. Colt has already spotted a zone with no mana flow, and they move there to hide. At the same time, Nadine and Gilbert's team is also battling fire slimes. Nadine wipes them out with magic, while Gilbert fights up close with his blade. Nadine notices these enemies feel far weaker than those from the artificial dungeon. Gilbert agrees, while their teammates stare in shock at the monsters they are facing. He guesses Eric already cleared his area, and urges everyone to move faster. Meanwhile, Eric's team sets up a tent at the chosen spot. Inside, they place a cauldron and begin brewing a cooling potion. Colt warns the process will take about an hour. Eric decides to use that time to explain his plan. Paula doubts it will work, but plays along and steps outside with him. Several drones are already waiting, broadcasting everything live. Eric starts casting runes, interfering directly with the system. This removes the restriction on audio transmission. Eric can now see viewer messages, and no one can mute his response. He boldly addresses the audience, explaining he tweaked the space code slightly. Somewhere else, Bert watches with clenched fists, boiling with rage. Dorsey nervously approaches him and suggests stepping in. Bert dismisses it, claiming everything is under control. In truth, he is terrified, as this pocket space was built by dozens of top-tier mages. Sadly for him, the rules do not forbid this kind of interference. Only leaking academy secrets could get a student punished. Eric starts discussing incidents clearly tied to the academy. He confidently repeats Bert's own words about only the strong surviving. Eric knows expelling him now would mean Bert breaking his own creed. He watches the comments roll in as viewers start connecting the dots. With the truth sinking in, Eric suggests starting the stream everyone waited for. Together with Paula, he heads toward a lava waterfall. Eric explains to viewers they came here to find something special. First, he casts wind acceleration on himself. Grabbing Paula by the waist, he leaps down with her. To everyone's shock, they seem to hang in midair. Hidden steps appear, letting them climb higher and higher. Eric knows Bert hid a treasure here, never meant for students. Soon, they reach the top of the lava waterfall. Paula spots something glittering inside the molten flow. Eric notes these are beads that will aid dungeon progression. Bert breaks into a cold sweat watching this unfold. Eric learned of this treasure's location through a special skill. He casts ice rain, freezing the lava to retrieve the beads. The clash of elements forms a safe path forward. Moments later, the artifact rests in Eric's palm. He explains to viewers that he obtained a fire essence. These beads grant temporary fire resistance to the holder. After that, Eric and Paula return to the tent. Paula clearly looks unimpressed by the taste of Colt's potion. Eric makes it clear she has no choice, and every last drop of the potion has to go down. After that, they move out to search for the entrance to the second level. Eric knows every route and leads them straight to a hidden passage in the ground. Together, they descend into an underground cave. Colt admits he would never have found this path alone, while Paula notes that discovery is meant to be brutal. That raises the question of how a fellow rookie like Eric knew about this place. Meanwhile, Eric catches one of the insects crawling along the cave walls. He pulls out the fire essence and signals the team to prepare before entering the second level. Eric also tells the viewers that a second level boss fight is coming soon. Before that, he plans to hunt down one more hidden treasure. To do so, they will have to clash with a salamander. Eric knows these monsters hoard shiny loot like ravens. He expects to find a second secret treasure there, the sword Balmung. Legends say this weapon once belonged to Siegfried and was forged to slay dragons. Paula reminds everyone that a salamander's weak spot is its belly. Usually, they are flipped over and hit with ice-based magic. Eric agrees and suggests preparing carefully before facing the beast. Together, they return to the surface and walk past barren mountains for several minutes. Soon, they reach a clearing littered with scattered weapons. Eric activates Odin's Eye to pinpoint what really matters. Before long, he notices one sword radiating insane energy. That replica only works if certain conditions are met. Still, Eric plans to take this item out of the dungeon. After that, they head back into the cave where the salamander lives. Eric suggests waiting until the lizard has eaten, knowing it will be calmer then. Paula warns that salamanders have an extremely sharp sense of smell. In response, Eric pulls out a prepared centipede. Paula jumps back at the sight, desperate to avoid touching it. Eric suddenly grabs her hand, making it clear she is vital to the plan. He explains that the insect's defense is releasing a foul stench. That stench, in his plan, will mask the team from the salamander. Anna and Colt stay hidden in cover. Paula, gathering all her courage, steps forward. She agreed only because Eric promised her something that would impress Dahlia. As a wind mage, Paula uses air currents to push the stench ahead. Soon the smell reaches the salamander, hiding Eric's team from its senses. Now it is Eric's turn to act, as he prepares an ice spear. With a precise strike, he hits the lizard square in the back. Enraged, the salamander begins charging flames inside its jaws. Eric readies the rusty sword he found earlier. Waiting for the monster to open its mouth, he throws the blade straight inside. The salamander thrashes, trying to swallow the sword stuck in its throat. In the end, it spits the blade out, along with a torrent of fire. Instead of the old sword, the legendary balmung now rests in Eric's hands. He explains to viewers that salamander fire has the power to purify items. That trait only exists while the beast lives, forcing him to get creative. With that done, it is time to finish the monster. One clean strike severs the salamander's front limb. Landing firmly, Eric casts ice spikes to break the creature's balance. Thanks to that move, the salamander fully exposes its belly. Eric launches himself upward, aiming to deliver the final decisive blow. At the same time, Zoe strikes from the information front. She releases an article about Eric, listing every major incident tied to his name. Dahlia is equally impressed by what her student is pulling off. She turns to Paul and asks him to gather the reporters. As a reward for slaying the salamander, Eric receives a magic ring. It lacks its core gem, but even incomplete, it still carries solid effects. Eric offers the ring to a teammate, but they refuse, having not fought. In the end, the ring stays with Eric. Right after that, they are transferred to the 3rd dungeon level. They appear inside a cave, standing before a magical barrier. Paula taps the barrier, which sounds like glass, confused about its purpose. Her answer comes as a heavy strike from the other side. Behind it stands a massive fire golem. Anna and Colt ask if Eric has a plan, but he signals it will not be needed. His intention is to fight the golem alone. A minute later, the monster smashes the barrier and the battle begins. Eric instantly dashes forward and charges in. His first strike throws the golem off balance. The creature retaliates, but Eric raises a barrier just in time. He activates magical binding, wrapping chains around the monster's body. Eric follows up with ice rain. Heavy ice jams the golem's joints, limiting its movement. That cue tells Eric it is time for water magic. The flames die out and the 3rd level boss falls. Both viewers and teammates are stunned by how easily it ended. To their shock, Eric refuses to exit the pocket space. He invites the audience to watch an even crazier fight. This time, his target is the level's hidden enemy, a dragon. Minutes later, they reach an underground lava river crossed by a stone bridge. Eric hypes the viewers by pointing out an intense energy presence. He reassures the team that system limits prevent true death here. Moving forward, the system announces a secret path has opened. Normal students would never find this lair, many failing before level 3. Suddenly, Paula spots something unusual ahead. Eric feels relieved. He does not need to justify moving that way. In the center of an empty space stands a strange structure with a hollow core. Eric pulls out the golem core reward and decides to test it. Instantly, the cave floor ignites beneath their feet, clearly triggering something. Eric signals his friends to back away. A fiery shape begins forming above the pedestal. Soon, it solidifies into the physical form of a dragon. Commentators erupt in rage that such a lethal monster was hidden in a student trial. Eric stirs them further by interfering with the system feed. The system warns that the dragon has entered berserk mode. Bert watches and assumes it is just a system glitch, seeing no real danger. A sudden scream shatters his confidence. On screen, Eric is clutching a wound on Paula's abdomen. Colt and Anna rush to her, shocked that such lethal danger is possible here. The commentators explode with anger and outrage. Eric barely holds back a victory grin, flipping Bert's schemes and manipulation right back at him. In truth, Paula has no wound at all, only a clean illusion spell playing its role. Now it is finally time to deal with the dragon. Eric draws the balmung sword, ready to give the audience a real anime tier show. He floods the blade with extra energy to crank its damage way up. Since the fight is against a dragon, the system boosts every sword strike automatically. With rapid swings, Eric sends several slashes crashing into the dragon. While the monster reels, he vaults over it and strikes straight from behind. The moment comes for the finisher, Icebound Earth. The entire cave freezes over in a flash of frost. The dragon is trapped solid, sealed inside a massive block of ice. The system announces the defeat of the level's hidden boss. At the same time, Bert's allies cut all ties, leaving him completely cornered. He cannot accept that a single student orchestrated his downfall. A collective letter from multiple guilds is delivered to his office. Skimming it, he sees charges listing countless crimes. By then, law enforcement is already rushing toward his office. Bert is arrested for multiple violations and endangering student lives. Meanwhile, Eric and his team exit the dungeon to a crowd of reporters. Eric states his hope that students will no longer face death during training. After that, he asks to let them pass to the medics. Dahlia's guild made sure their people were already on standby. Otherwise, the staged injury illusion on Paula would have been exposed instantly. Minutes later, Bert Cruz is led out of the academy in handcuffs. Protesters pelt him with eggs as shouts of shame echo everywhere. Afterward, Dahlia's guild, the Raider Association, and Eric address the press. Thanks to Isabella's mental conditioning, they secured critical documents. That made it impossible for Bert to clear his name. Days later, the uproar fades and students return to their studies. Gilbert admits he realized how weak he truly was during the trial. Nadine quietly agrees with him. Even Eric, despite his level, shares the same feeling. A future battle against the Aesir awaits him. Soon, all students are gathered in the main hall for announcements. To everyone's surprise, instructor Linda steps up to the podium. Eric is not shocked that she replaces Bert Cruz as supervisor. It turns out she was a spy for the Raider Association. Eric suspects a guild takeover would have sparked massive backlash. A neutral, state-appointed figure raises far fewer questions. Linda greets the students and announces herself as acting director. A few days later, students return home to rest with their families. Eric proudly hands his mother the payment checks. Eliza is stunned by the massive sums her son earned. Eric calmly tells her the money is hers. In his past life, he always dreamed of proving his success to her. Smiling, he assures her she no longer needs to worry about money. His mother hugs him tightly, thanking him for everything. Suddenly, someone knocks at the door. The visitors turn out to be Paula and Nadine. Paula explains her family is hosting a picnic and invites him along. When he arrives, it turns out Nadine is currently living together with Paula. Eric feels awkward, remembering that Nadine no longer has a family of her own. Soon, Paula's parents also join the gathering. Eric warmly recalls their care from his past life after his mother passed away. Paula refuses to let anyone slack and quickly assigns tasks to make the picnic perfect. Paula's father turns out to be a former pro chef, making the food absolutely next level. Sadly, the rest of the group is busy, and Eric suggests inviting them next time. Meanwhile, Gilbert's father scolds him for risking his future for others. The man is tied to shady schemes himself and is furious his son might expose him. He urges Gilbert to hunt for Eric's weaknesses and knock him off his throne. To his shock, Gilbert refuses outright. Raised to step on others for success, Gilbert realizes he wants a different path. Without another word, Gilbert walks away. He still wants to beat Eric, but only by his own strength and fair play. Night falls, and Eric heads home through dark streets. Suddenly, he senses a familiar energy nearby and turns around. It turns out to be Hela. She insists Eric should clear the second trial as soon as possible. Odin has begun to move decisively. The protective power of the prophecy is rapidly weakening. Eric recalls that in his past life, he lived peacefully until 27 before being killed. Hela explains too much prophetic power was spent rewriting history. Time travel is beyond even the gods' control. Hela suggests moving somewhere quiet to discuss the details. At Eric's home, the goddess tells him about Heimdall. This god can see the near future and carries a mighty horn. Heimdall is already on Earth and actively searching for Eric. Eric doubts they even have time left for another trial. Hela cryptically reveals she found a way to delay Heimdall. At the moment, Heimdall is trapped in a prison of darkness. Hela announces they will head to Iceland, where ancient ruins stand. Those ruins were built specifically to test the Chosen One. Only someone capable of defeating Odin may enter them. After the monster breaches, mysterious ruins appeared all across the world. Raiders soon discovered powerful artifacts hidden inside. Due to violent clashes, governments placed these ruins under protection. In her cat form, Hela cheerfully explains the mistletoe Eric wears was found in such ruins. The ruins were created by giants, a wise race rivaling the Aesir in power. Eric admits he feels nervous, despite preparing as much as possible. He even activated a shadow mineral that boosts shadow armor. Hours later, Eric and Hela arrive at a luxury hotel. On the way to their room, they cross paths with a global star. To Eric's surprise, the man shows clear interest in him. His name is Balak, owner of the true Balmung, the dragon-slaying sword. The European presses Eric to explain who he really is. The Raider's companion interrupts the exchange. She apologizes for his behavior and asks Eric to ignore it. Later, alone with her,
Balak admits his interest was no coincidence. Passing by, he noticed Eric was concealing his energy. Not long after, guards near the ruins spot movement lurking in the darkness. Despite the guards' warnings, the stranger keeps moving forward without slowing down. Getting closer, he uses mind control on them, shutting down any chance of questions. Removing his helmet, Eric feels like a villain now, even though these ruins were built for him. Before heading to Iceland, Hela explained 2 conditions required to enter the ruins. One condition is power equal to a special raider rank beyond the norm. Eric admits he has not reached that level yet. Then, he remembers the reward gained inside the themed dungeon. The plain-looking key turns out to be Loki's key, able to open any lock. Standing before the ruins, Eric uses the key and opens the doors with ease. Inside, a long corridor awaits them, lit by steady torchlight. At the end of the passage, a giant sits upon a massive throne. His name is Smir, guardian of the ruins by order of his father, Grungir. Hela returns to her true form and states she escorts the Chosen One. She explains their urgency and asks for passage. Smir refuses, for reasons she should already understand. He says Eric opened the doors through trickery and deceit. The giant advises gaining true strength before attempting the trial. Claims of urgency do nothing to sway him. Smir says Jotunheim is long buried in ash, and he has all the time left. Suddenly, Eric cuts in, calling all of it nonsense. He activates chain lightning and presses the giant to let him pass. Smir grows irritated by the hero's bold attacks. Rising from his throne, the giant steps toward Eric, eyes blazing. At the ruins entrance, Balak questions the Watchers about intruders. They calmly reply that everything remains sealed. Balak is certain such energy surges only happen when ruins are opened. He calls a trusted ally, who says she will arrive immediately. Smir demands respect, his voice nearly crushing Eric and Hela. For Eric, retreat or fighting Heimdall leads to the same end as facing Smir. He chooses to stand his ground. The giant declares his hospitality has ended. A massive spear forms above and rockets straight at Eric. Using Universal Source, Eric destroys the weapon mid-flight. Boosted by wind speed, he charges the giant head-on. Smir realizes Eric aims straight for his heart and cannot allow it. The giant swings, trying to swat him away. Eric feels the same crushing pressure as during the fight with Hugin, a sense of total hopelessness, with no clear path to victory. Even so, the hero refuses to give up. He unleashes Icy Lands, a secret skill of the Dark Elves. Smir glares at the jagged ice spikes forming before him. Answering in kind, he creates stone spikes just as fearsome. Eric counters with fire blasts and wind currents to shatter incoming ice. Elemental clashes explode, forcing the giant to shield himself. Using the chaos, Eric activates stealth and vanishes from sight. Smir scans the hall in surprise, unable to find him. In the next instant, Eric leaps back into view with an attack. Mid-air, he forms a weapon and strikes at close range. The blade shatters on contact with the giant's body. Eric crashes to the floor, leaving not a single scratch on his enemy. The giant is surprised by this approach and deems everything the hero does now completely pointless. Eric pushes back with the belief that he alone gives meaning to his actions and his life. He decides it is better to try and fail than regret never acting at all. Suddenly, an overwhelming force slams him into the ground, crushing him down. Smir towers above, demanding to know if Eric truly meant those words. Just as suddenly, the crushing pressure vanishes from the hero's body. The giant proposes a deal, granting Eric a chance to prove his worth. Eric declares he will endure the giant's strongest single blow to earn passage. Hela rushes from cover, trying to stop them from doing something reckless. Smir accepts Eric's condition without hesitation. He forges a spear from stone, preparing to test the hero's resolve. With a powerful swing, the giant hurls the spear straight at Eric. When the dust settles, a massive crater scars the opposite wall. Suddenly, Eric reappears as if stepping out of the shadows themselves. He used Unity with Shadow to evade the strike without fail. The giant seems satisfied with this display of skill and resolve. A hidden passage opens in the wall, leading deeper into the ruins. Hela stares in disbelief as Eric somehow bypasses the restriction. Moving deeper, they encounter the Norns, guardians of the first trial of wisdom. Hela warns that from this point on, she can no longer interfere. The guardians present a riddle, where one always lies and the other speaks truth. 2 paths await behind them, one safe, the other leading to the lands of the dead. Eric is allowed only one question to one of the guardians. He knows such riddles well, yet either path poses no real threat to him. Choosing at random, he asks one guardian where her guidance would lead him. The guardian positions herself before the right-hand door. When it is time to choose, Eric calmly walks the opposite path. Entering the land of the dead, Hela demands to know why he chose it knowingly. Eric admits he was tempted by the mention of the dead themselves.
At that moment, undead corpses begin rising from the ground. Eric activates the sacrifice skill without hesitation. Surrounded only by the dead, the skill transforms into a lethal attack spec. As a result, Eric gains an enormous amount of experience points.
When they finally leave, he only regrets that it ended so quickly.
The next chamber is filled with scattered items and a massive magic circle. A glowing mass of light greets them, revealing itself as the second trial's guardian. The guardian introduces himself as Mimir, creator of the Nornir system. Long ago, Loki sought his advice on raising a great enemy. The answer became a system freeing one from the influence of the Aesir.
Because of this, Eric chose his own fate and now stands here.
Mimir says he cannot answer much, but will grant one answer as a reward. The next trial requires placing a single item from the room upon the altar. Eric is warned this test demands pure intellect and allows only one attempt. As a hint, Mimir states the trial must be done on a Wednesday. He also notes Eric already possesses wisdom that can be gained here. Mimir casually adds that failure will result in death. An hourglass appears, leaving Eric 1 hour to solve the puzzle. Eric activates a skill to analyze every item scattered around him. Unfortunately, it offers no clues, as all the items appear ordinary. Minutes pass, one after another, as Eric sinks deeper into thought. When the moment comes, Eric grips the spear in his hand. Stepping to the altar, he decides to offer himself as the sacrifice. Suddenly, the entire chamber collapses into chaos. The altar cracks apart, revealing endless cosmic space beyond. The first clue was the weekday, Wednesday, named after Odin. The second was Eric holding the eye of an Aesir and rune insight. In the context of sacrifice and wisdom, the myth fits only one god. That is why the correct answer turns out to be Eric himself. Mimir praises his sharp instincts, questioning if he grasps the cost. Eric recalls Odin hanging pierced by a spear on Yggdrasil for 9 days. The trial's truth is simple. Everything in this world has a price. Eric turns the spear toward himself and drives it into his abdomen. In an instant, he stands again in an intact chamber. Mimir announces the trial is complete. Now it is his turn to honor the promise. To keep the Aesir from catching on, Mimir gives only 3 words. Those words are Raider, I, and Shinier. As a final note, he urges Eric to doubt everything to reach truth. Eric then finds himself before a massive mirror. Smear congratulates him on clearing the first 2 trials. The last one involves Erd's mirror, an artifact of the past. Smear explains Eric will witness a giant's memory, then give an answer. He urges Eric to find his own truth, as no answer is absolute. Eric reaches out, initiating the trial. The mirror glows, and a Norn speaks from within. She laments having waited a long time for his arrival. Erd entwines fingers with Eric, inviting him to see past shaping future. In the next moment, Jotunheim spreads out before them. The goddess guides their focus to a fragment of history. They watch a young Schmier being trained by his father. The father warns him not to judge his own worth too soon. Eric and Hela realize why Smear later softened toward the hero. News of an Aesir attack abruptly interrupts the lesson. Grugnir lifts a massive stone weapon, ready to repel the assault. Erd says the tragedy does not end there and shows what follows. When Eric opens his eyes again, only corpses and fire remain. Hela recognizes this moment as just before the peace pact. Atop a mountain of giant corpses stands Thor. The god of thunder surveys the battlefield with predatory calm. Eric is shaken by that power, wondering if he could ever reach it. Hela explains the 5 trials exist to forge him into his destiny. Thor challenges the giant king to a final duel to decide the war. Grubnir steps forward, accepting the challenge. Erd tells Eric these events sealed Asgard's victory. Young Smear begged his father not to fight, but was ignored. Grungnir only asked Smear to guard his grave and await the god's foe. Thus the ruins were built to honor fallen giants. The battle ends as foretold, with Thor victorious. Eric activates an empty card, recording the lightning god's skill. Hela warns him that he cannot yet wield this power. The hero notes he will grow strong enough with her help, so stress is off his mind. Erd declares their journey through memory has reached its end. She hopes that even if they never meet again, luck will stay on his side. In the next blink, Eric stands before a mirror riddled with cracks. The giant Smear is already waiting for him there. Smear leans closer, testing whether Eric has the resolve to stay his course. Eric admits he has much to lose, and many things could drag him into despair. Still, he vows to always find the strength to keep moving forward. The answer satisfies the giant, who congratulates him on clearing the trial. The system echoes the congratulations and announces the reward for the second trial. Eric puts his armor back on and prepares to leave. Outside, a massive crowd of raiders has already gathered. The heroes peek out carefully and realize slipping away is not an option. Eric knows he cannot handle even 2 special rank raiders head on. He asks Hela to handle the setup while he buys time. The moment he appears at the ruins entrance, Balak heads straight for him. The man instantly knows the dungeon is cleared, as its energy has vanished. Eric states the place was meant only for him, with no entry for others. He then reveals a copy of Balak's sword, leaving the European stunned. Eric points out there is no rule against creating artifact replicas. Offended, Balak launches a flurry of strikes, but Eric dodges them clean. In the end, Balak admits not many can evade his attacks like that. Other raiders watch the duel in stunned silence. Balak's red-haired partner joins them, warning the blades are more than lookalikes. According to her, the sword's power is perfectly identical. Hela informs Eric that her preparations are complete. To her surprise, Eric chooses not to flee, but to fight Balak. Chances to clash with a raider of this level do not come every day. The raider strikes first, but Eric has already charged his blade. When the swords collide, a massive energy blast erupts. Shockingly, Balak is the one blown backward. His companion slows his fall with magic. Rushing to him, she is horrified by his condition. She looks at Eric, wondering how such a monster walks around unguarded. She fires an attack at him, but it passes straight through. Balak regains consciousness and tells her to report everything to headquarters. In that moment, she realizes their opponent was truly overwhelming. Meanwhile, Hela teleports Eric back to their hotel room. The next day, after wrapping up in Iceland, the hero returns home. Suddenly, his phone rings, asking if he has chosen a club yet. Clubs are raider interest groups, usually formed by second-year students. Through them, students take jobs and earn serious cash. Of course, good results only come from getting into a strong club. Eric recalls his past life, where he was turned into little more than a slave. Despite friends urging him to join theirs, he only promises to think it over. Back home, the hero drops onto the couch, completely drained. Hela calmly notes he has pushed himself hard these past days. Suddenly, every hair on her body stands on end. Over the city of the first monster breach, the sky itself begins to crack. From the lit sky, a man falls straight down to the ground. Landing hard, Heimdall grinds his teeth, pissed that a goddess clone actually stalled him. Hela is more shocked by his choice to appear near the ruined city. Eric realizes that students will soon start gathering there. The goddess guesses Heimdall read his near future and acted first. Eric decides proper prep is needed to face an enemy like that. As a trial reward, Grungnir gifted him giant blood. With it, Eric can boost strength and wisdom by 30 points. He notes with regret that consuming it requires special rank first. Still, Eric gained a second gift, the Giant's Fury ability. Thanks to it, damage to Asgard gods and Valkyries doubles. Together with Hela, he heads into the forest to train. The legendary Thor-derived skill proves hard to control. Hela warns that without fast leveling, his body may break. After training, Eric focuses on the raven hunting task. Self-healing helps, but it will not fix the core weakness. Suddenly, a car stops beside him. Melissa, a rival guild leader, calls out and suggests a talk. She wants to recruit Eric into her guild. As payment, she offers the Fang of Nidhogg. That blade ranks second in auction value, right after Balak's sword. Eric admits few would gamble like that on a 17-year-old. He asks what else hides behind such a generous deal. Melissa admits Eric's feats and connections match the Fang's worth. Eric flashes a sharp grin and asks to judge the deal by holding it once. Unaware of the risk, she allows it. The moment he grips it, insane energy floods his senses. To Melissa's shock, he calmly sets the weapon back. With a polite smile, he thanks her and walks away. Rage hits her hard, as no sane raider would refuse such a prize. Back home, Eric activates Weapon Insight and recreates an exact copy. He knows every move now must be calculated, and every chance taken. He can barely imagine how strong the god ahead truly is. Suddenly, Nadine calls him. She invites him to a raider festival in a few days. Eric sees it as a perfect chance to gain more power. Festival day feels calm and almost peaceful. They roam the grounds, letting Eric ease his mind. Near sunset, an explosion erupts nearby. Sirens instantly announce a dungeon opening close by. Awakened raiders begin mass evacuation of civilians. Eric senses brutal energy from the dungeon and blood in the air. Nadine urges escape, leaving it to pro-raiders. Eric knows running will not help. He feels rotten energy from one raider and knows he caused this. A red-haired man turns with a grin, greeting the great enemy of the Aesir. In the same instant, Eric orders Nadine to run. The redhead steps in front of her, swinging for a strike. Eric moves faster, catching the fist and demanding answers. The raider mocks the title, expecting someone stronger. He reveals himself as one of Odin's ravens, still unnamed. Eric realizes Nadine cannot escape now, so he signals her to stay behind him. He draws his sword and prepares the raven for defeat. In a flash, both launch forward, colliding head-on. The raven fights with a chain, cleanly blocking the sword strike. His form shifts into a plague doctor suit, hinting at a tale about Hugin. The raven describes Hugin as honest, nearly god tier in power. Eric refuses to believe someone like that would try to kill him. The raven claims prophecy forced everything, a power even gods cannot beat. Eric triggers frozen ground, shutting down the nonsense. The raven rushes him in response. Nadine decides she cannot just stand aside anymore. She calls to Eric and throws him an energy core. Eric is surprised, as the stone allows energy transfer between people. Nadine focuses, channeling her power into him. Backed by her support, Eric hunts for the enemy's weak points. He unleashes chain lightning at the raven. The raven blocks and keeps pushing forward. Using the chain like a spring, he draws a dagger and strikes. Eric deflects the blow with his sword. Landing, the raven admits Heimdall was right about Eric's strength. Eric accepts the praise and advances with his blade. He knows prophecy still prevents the raven from killing him. The raven readies his chain to block the next strike. Eric fakes, then smashes the mask with his other fist. The lens shatters, and the raven finally grasps how dangerous Eric is. Enraged by the insult, the raven lunges back. Eric dodges smoothly, hiding his sword. Instead, he draws Nidhogg's fang. The raven freezes, shocked by the blade's presence. In that moment, chain lightning wraps around his arm. Eric strikes while the enemy is restrained. The raven breaks free as the system flags poison from the fang. Eric moves faster, slashing him again. The chain weapon shatters under relentless lightning. Eric notices the poison, slowing his foe. Still, the raven refuses to yield. Instead of Eric, he dashes straight for Nadine. Nadine instantly raises a defensive barrier. The raven crushes it with terrifying ease. With no other choice, Eric hurls the blade as Nadine ducks. A violent explosion fills the air with dust. The system announces Eric has defeated 2 of the 3 ravens. Drained of energy, Eric nearly collapses, caught by Nadine. She presses her lips together in regret. Once again, she feels she failed to truly help him. The next day, Eric walks through the academy courtyard as usual. Suddenly, students swarm him, asking him to join their clubs. Their arguing draws a crowd, and Eric asks them to quiet down. Amid the noise, Jenny steps up to introduce herself. Eric is surprised, since, unlike the others, he never heard of her before. To everyone's shock, Eric announces he will not join any existing club. Instead, he plans to create his own. He shares the same decision with his friends. Gilbert reacts with doubt, since freshmen have never formed their own club before. He already fears the dirty tricks upperclassmen might pull on them. Raven is also at the table, still motivated purely by money. Eric ignores that and says fear means nothing if they grow strong. Despite the workload, he knows their own club will beat joining someone else's. Eric promises money will not be a problem, and their potential points only upward. He hopes these conditions will let everyone truly grow. Together, they head to the academy gym. A special spell there boosts gravity. This lets students train harder and gain strength faster. To help recovery, Eric and Wilbert create a special tonic. Soon, the outdoor trial day arrives, and students board buses. Eric warns everyone to stay sharp, since real monsters await. Even if raiders cleared parts of the area, danger still remains. Arriving there, Eric vows his friends will not get hurt this time. They are dropped into an abandoned city where thousands once died. The academy aims to rebuild it while training future raiders. An instructor warns they will stay here for a full week. Students receive survival kits meant to be shared within teams. After that, survival depends only on the students themselves. The first goal is simple survival, proof of raider potential. The second task is killing as many monsters as possible. Once left alone, clubs immediately start planning. Eric's team claims an abandoned building as their base. Suddenly, Raven senses someone approaching. Minutes later, a crowd of other students closes in. Raven once belonged to that very group. Now, thanks to Eric's persuasion, she stands with his club. The boys take this as a personal insult and want payback. Eric reminds their leader he already beat him during rookie hunts and suggests leaving. The leader counters that this time, he has backup. Eric fires an energy sphere to cool his confidence. He reminds them his friends stand behind him
and will not be victims. Ignoring the warning, the group attacks anyway. Their weapons crash not into Eric, but into Gilbert's shield. Mages join the clash. Paula sees this and refuses to let it slide. She raises a barrier, blocking both magic and physical attacks. Nadine steps forward next. She activates the Blade of Alfheim's skill. The strike sends the enemies fleeing. The leader slips, and Eric instantly catches up. His teammates abandon him without hesitation. Eric steps aside, letting Raven take over. She repays her former leader for calling her a useless scout. Afterward, they bring an instructor to the scene. He is stunned that such a small team defeated senior students. The man cautiously turns toward the exit, assuring that he will handle everything. Eric shifts his focus to Curtis, who rushed in to help. Even Curtis cannot explain why he suddenly chose to back the bold Eric. He turns to leave, but Eric warns him about the danger of wandering alone. Blushing, Curtis decides to stay close to Eric's club. Naturally, Eric teases him a bit, making sure he does not bully anyone on the team. As night falls, monsters begin crawling out into the ruined streets. The group decides to hunt, aiming to rack up points. Soon, they stumble upon a strange portal in the middle of the street. Nadine notes that the mana here feels far denser than nearby areas. Places like this usually spawn stronger monsters more often. Eric urges everyone to stay sharp, since anything could appear at any moment. The team immediately obeys and draws their weapons. Raven senses where Eric is heading thanks to her instincts, and grows tense. Her only request is a chance to escape the battlefield before death catches her. Eric answers her fear with nothing but a calm smile. After a long night, the group rests and sets up a tent. Gilbert and Paula stay inside to guard the alchemist. Eric and Raven begin patrolling, but harpies suddenly ambush them. Eric wipes them out fast with chain lightning. After that, he and Raven head out to hunt again. Reaching a rooftop, the system warns Eric that he is near the local boss. In the next instant, the Harpy Queen bursts into view. Expecting valuable loot, Eric confidently draws Nidhogg's Fang. The Harpy does not hesitate and charges straight in. Raven barely escapes as razor feathers tear through concrete. Eric moves in as well, dodging the deadly barrage. Closing the distance, he is forced to evade another flurry of attacks. He falls back on a proven move and activates Chain Lightning. Once the Harpy is paralyzed, he finishes her with a clean strike. As a reward, Eric receives wings. He equips the artifact with satisfaction, gaining a form of flight. Suddenly, he notices Raven staring in shock. On the rooftop lie plain, almost unnoticed gloves. The system reveals they once belonged to the first awakened, Rupert. That night, Eric again wonders if Heimdall might strike during this trial. His thoughts return to awakening his true core ability. Dahlia once told him about the tragedy that unlocked her power. Even so, she never wished such pain upon her student. These thoughts lead Eric to Nadine. She reveals her ability awakened after a family member died. Surprisingly, she speaks of it as something that person deserved. After her parents died, Nadine lived with an aunt who treated her cruelly. Her grandmother often visited, making life a little brighter. That fragile peace shattered when her grandmother fell ill. She gave all her savings and guardianship rights to the aunts. The grandmother's death crushed Nadine, especially her refusal of treatment. Afterward, the aunt treated Nadine like property, deciding her fate. One day, Nadine returned home to find only smoldering ruins. That was how she lost her entire family before even reaching adulthood. Eric snaps Nadine out of her trance and tells her not to force herself to speak if she does not want to. At that moment, Paula steps out of the tent after hearing noise outside. Unfortunately, she sees not her friends, but Heimdall standing there. Sensing danger, the others rush outside as well. The mere presence of the god is enough to knock them off their feet. Suddenly, Eric calls out to him, arriving just in time to finally face him head on. Heimdall instantly notices the massive energy in Eric and wonders how he obtained Odin's eye. Eric responds by daring the god to take the artifact if the eye matters so much. Raven yells that Eric can never defeat someone this powerful. Eric orders his friends to run immediately. In that very second, Heimdall launches his attack. A single strike sends shockwaves through an entire nearby building. Eric activates Storm Wind. Using it, he hurls his friends far away from the danger zone. Nadine insists they should call for powerful instructors for help. Paula agrees, and, while fleeing, urges Eric to hold out until they return. Meanwhile, Eric activates Icy Ground. Heimdall is impressed, yet knows the skill needs time to reach full power. The god charges in without waiting. Eric draws Balmung to block the incoming blow. Knowing he cannot let the damage pass through, he anchors himself with Chain Lightning. As the shockwave reaches him, he braces and blocks it with the sword.
The chains strain, barely holding Eric in place.
Heimdall rages that a mere human dares resist him.
Eric suddenly teleports behind the god, moving in to strike back.